So hey guys, how are you all? Welcome to. So we are back with a brand new movie on what if Naruto was share 6 powers with sibling movie. But before we start, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Now let's begin the story. Mew was bored. The little pink legendary hovered around in her room inside the Origin Tower where the legendaries usually met in their monthly meetings. While that was what its original purpose was, it also doubled as some sort of villa for the legendaries, a place for them to mingle together and be their true self. You'd be surprised to see that Darkrai, the Lord of Nightmare, was actually a very docile being, or how ladylike the usually childish Shaman and Celebi is. In this place, they could be themselves, opening all their mask and mingle like a family did. And like all family, they have a father and a mother. The father role quite obviously felt its most righteous contender, Arceus. The alpha Pokemon was already fatherly to begin with. He was the oldest of them, the wisest, the most patient with a hint of mischief like all good daddy, and also without a doubt, the strongest. It was really justified for them to give the title of the father to Arceus in their little family gathering. The Illama-like entity was only too happy to accept it with open hands. Now the role of the mother was still up for debate. Cresselia was a good enough contender for the role. She was motherly, yes, very much so. Her signature move was a dead giveaway as obvious as a burning house in the middle of winter. Strong? Not so much. Cresselia, unlike her brother, was a pacifist with no interest in fighting whatsoever. So, her status was still up for debate, but most decided that the little sister of the Nightmare King wasn't suited for that role. She accepted it with a smile and just huddled closer to the living shadow known as Darkrai. Then, there's Palkia. The spatial Pokemon was strong. No doubt. Anyone foolish enough to challenge her strength was going to be having a personal meeting with her spatial friend. Dialga had a live testimony about it after one of their little spats in the human realm. However, her temper was just too short. About as short as a human baby, which meant it was so short it might as well be non-existent. No, she was not a good mother. If anything, she was a troublesome sister. Dialga always nodded each time Giratina or Kyogre pointed that out. The list goes on, starting from Ho-Oh and ending with Zygarde. Somehow it ended with her being the mother of the little family of immortal overpowered beings. The tantrum that Mewtwo released was sure to sink some islands that time. Mew shook her tiny pink feline head. She needed entertainment. As much as she loved being treated like her age, which is very old, she also needed stimuli. She wasn't the type to seat herself in the garden of Alto Mare with Latias and Celebi then drink teas with little grass types. No. She was an adventurer. She's a prankster. She needs. Hello Mew. Jirachi. Mew nearly jumped in sheer excitement. The Wishmaker glided forward to meet her and gave her a hug. The little troublemaker was one foe the few that truly clicked with her along with Manaphy and Victini. It's truly a shame that he can only be awake for 7 days in a 1,000 years span. The Origin Tower needs more live bringer. And she doesn't mean Xerneas for that. Seriously. He's a male and he was so serene it was hurting to be naughty in his presence. Jirachi. I missed you. How's this millennia's sleep? The little pink prankster asked enthusiastically to her friend, family, partner in crime. Speaking of which, shouldn't you be off granting wishes? What are you doing here? She asked in rapid succession, all the while crushing the lungs of the little white and gold fairy-like Pokemon. I miss you too. This millennia's just like any other, boring and dreamless. Maybe I should ask Cresselia for a good dream. He mused to himself as he disentangled himself from the bone-crushing hug of the psychic-type legendary. She may be small but her strength is monstrous. Anyway, I'm here for a little chat with you, Jirachi answered. About? A wish. He said. Oh, weren't you supposed to grant them without second thought? Mew was confused. All the millennias she knew about the Wishmaker's job, she never saw her chose which wish to grant. Usually, he just appeared. Someone became slack-jawed before grinning greedily and begged him for something and he just swished. All wish granted. End of problem. So what's so different against this one? It was about family, he said. So? A family which is already dead. Jirachi restated his statement, stopping the little pink bundle of energy cold in her tracks airborne. There's this boy in one of the dimension Palkia took me to yesterday, he was. Well, I'll be blunt, hated by his whole village. He was abused physically and mentally by almost everyone there. You could practically count the number of people who can actually smile at him. The Wishmaker started his tale and Mew's face started to drain of all its color. According to Palkia, the boy was something called a Jinchuriki. Something about human sacrifices, which were used to seal and house a demonic beast with the same power level as Yveltal's, at least the boys is around Yveltal's. He sucked a deep breath to continue on with the story. Supposedly, his parents were dead, sealing the beast in him, and now he was. Well, as we speak, I guess he was being beaten senseless by the villager. Sometimes I wonder if my brother was right in hating them. Humans, I mean. Mew murmured silently to herself. Really, with all their faults, flaws and wrongs, she should have encouraged Mewtwo's hatred for them. Even Yveltal's tendency on spreading plagues was quite justified if this were the case. But, she just couldn't find it in herself to hate humans. Maybe this is the reason she became the mother hen of their ragtag family, she guessed. She was forgiving, full of love and understanding. Anyway, he wished to have a family. Jirachi continued, wisely ignoring Mew's musing about anti-human ideals. A family that loved him and accepted him with all their hearts. Jirachi sobbed a bit at the end of his words. A single tear flowed down his green eyes. It hurts me that such a child would be wishing what should has been his right from birth. Mew inhaled, taking a huge intake of air to keep herself from following her friend's breakdown. She will have to have a talk with Mesprit. The lake guardian of emotion could help her control her pity for the human child. Let's get Latias or Xerneas and discuss this with them. The Eon's sister had a good experience dealing with family business, as she often did with her rather hormonal brother, Latios. Xerneas, well, he was life incarnate, he should know what's the best for this. Mew wasn't delusional though. Finding Latias was never an easy job. The elusive Red Eon was a master in the art of stealth, even though her natural bubbly attitude should contradict that skill. How Latios could find her with ease was something debatable. The deer of life was easy to find, Mew decided. All you need to do was follow the small happy cries of insect and grass-type Pokémons. Voila! You got yourself Xerneas. The blue deer-like Pokémon sat on his 4 long legs in the large green garden they owned in the Origin Tower. She wisely chose to ignore the rapid growth of the wild grasses there. Shaman will not be pleased with these. Good day, Jirachi, Mew. Xerneas greeted with a polite nod. Yes. Yes. Jirachi waved him off. Xerneas, what will you do if someone asked you for a family? Xerneas raised his brows in interest. Considering that my sister is a hikikomori geek and my brother has homicidal tendencies, is it really wise to ask this question to me? He joked with a small smile, no doubt feeling fond of his siblings. No matter. If someone were to ask me for a family, huh? Let me guess, since Jirachi is here. Someone wished for that to you? A nod. Yeah. The family in question is dead. Another nod. Yeah. You can't resurrect them in fear of gaining Giratina's ire, but you're also incapable of creating a new human for him? This time, Jirachi didn't nod his head. Instead he gritted his teeth in frustration while his left eyebrow was twitching furiously. For Arceus's sake, yes. Now stop asking question about details and just answer the goddamned question. Mew stood at the side, watching in silent shock as the small wishmaker suddenly went as aggressive as Groudon and pulled the face of the deer of life to glare at him. Xerneas was unconcerned of Jirachi's sudden bout of masculinity though, and just smiled amusingly at him. Have you ever considered taking a page from the many humans out there? He asked calmly. The blue stag stood up slowly and regally, a figure of perfection in flesh, and rose to his full height. If this human wished for a family, I would give him a couple of Pokemon eggs for him to care for. He said, nodding sagely at the two of them. Of course, considering that the one who wished would and could care for the hatchlings. Did my answer satisfy you? He asked, purple eyes twinkling with amusement as he eyed the slowly grinning Jirachi. You don't need to answer, Sugar Pixie. That loony grin on your face is answer enough. With that, Xerneas pranced away. Thanks, Xerne. Jirachi shouted, gaining himself a chuckle from the distance. Now, where to get the eggs? Leave that to me. Mew jumped happily in the air, twirling and spinning around in happiness. Finally, some job for her boredom. Any type will do. From which region do you want? Will we need any stones for him? Mew asked in rapid succession. Ooh, I can't wait. The two little legendary Pokémon spent the rest of their afternoon in the forest, plotting and scheming their plans for the little poor human who wished the simple love of a family. Konoha no Sato, Hai no Kuni. It was the 10th of October in the Elemental Nation. A specific date celebrated by the people of Konoha no Sato as the day the demon fox fallen into defeat by the hands of their leader. It was also this specific date that they took joy in torturing a small blonde boy barely in his 6th year of life. The small boy was Naruto Uzumaki, or as he's so popularly known, Demon Brat. He was a blond boy with soft tanned skin, bright blue eyes as deep as the ocean and the sky. On his cheeks was 6 whisker-like marks, 3 on each cheeks. He was a very bright boy, always smiling and grinning happily at everyone, even though he only met scorns and hatred. Now though, he couldn't smile. Not with all the wounds littering his body. Not with the mobs still kicking him in the stomach and occasionally whipping him with leather belts. It's painful. He cried. What's my fault? He asked. Why do they hate me? He asked. Thousands of times this question flew around in his head. Gigi never told him about his parents, saying that he wasn't ready to know about their identity for fear of their enemies hunting him. There were thoughts that his parents were criminals and the villagers hated him for them. But he crushed that thought so fast it might as well be non-existent to begin with. His parents are good. If they birthed him to the world, they must be good. Then why? He wondered. Ack, he cried out in pain. Please. Stop it. He begged weakly, unable to find any more strength. They didn't care though, and continued on with the torture. He cried at his weakness. Cried for himself and his pathetic self. Wishing someone to help him and save him from the pain. He closed his eyes and prayed that someone would come to his rescue. Gigi, Tuchi-Jiken or Ayame Ni-chan. Inu-chan and Nako-chan is fine too. Before his consciousness fell, he dared to open his eyes one last time. And he saw that the popol was down on the ground, asleep. But unlike normal sleep, they weren't silent. They screamed and shouted in fear, writhing around as if they were in pain and agony. In the end, he did fall unconscious. His last thought was thanking whatever being out there that helped him and stopped the pain for him. He wasn't aware that his body floated off the ground, enveloped by a pink hue of energy. He wasn't aware that he disappeared from the alleyway in which his torturer played their sick games on him. All he was aware of is that he was safe. Naruto smiled contentedly in his sleep, unaware that he was in the presence of 5 very angry beings of untold power capable of leveling his village to the ground. Several minutes ago. All right. Mew cheered. All done and ready to go. She whooped around in the air happily. Jirachi smiled at her, thankful that she was helping him with this one difficult wish. Beside him, sitting on the ground elegantly and beautifully was the lunar Pokemon, Cresselia. She smiled at the 2 childish legendary and giggled at their antics, enjoying the sight of them playing around with each other as they cheered for their successful mission. Beside her, stood her brother. The Lord of Nightmare, Darkrai. The living shadow stood on a needle-like leg he conjured from the shadow, watching the 2 of them with an eye smile on his icy blue eyes as he shook his head on their childishness, unable to find it in himself to chastise them. Off to the side, Xerneas stood regally, eyeing them all with amusement practically shing as bright as the sun within his violet orbs. His horns glowed a myriad of color in the darkness of the night, illuminating them with ethereal light. So, what is the plan again? He asked with a tilt of his head. We go to that dimension, sneak into his home, snuggle these eggs into his cupboard and has Cresselia talks to him in his sleep. You will heal any wound and malnourishments he had and create a happy surrounding in his home. Use that aura of life he bragged about. Darkrai will deal with security. Any that comes to harm that child tonight will be cursed with nightmares. Mwahaha. Jirachi laughed maniacally. Yes. Of course. Without missing a beat, Xerneas answered, unperturbed by the sudden episode of insanity. Well then, everyone ready? At their nods, Mew smiled. Let's go. Mew extended her massive psychic power to tear open a dimensional rift. A giant hole with pink outline appeared in front of her, cracking with amethyst lightning. Mew flew first, Jirachi and Cresselia followed suit. Darkrai shrugged his shoulders at Xerneas, and together the 2 brought up the rear of the group, and as the last of them entered, the rift closed in on itself. As soon as they entered the dark tunnel of the dimensional rift, they were all hit by a sudden light. As they opened their eyes and blinked out the leftover black spots in their eyes, they realized with a start that they were mid-air. Quite humorously, the only one incapable of levitating, Xerneas, stayed in mid-air for several seconds in shock before suddenly, gravity reared its ugly face on him. Luckily, most of the party were psychic types and was more than strong enough to support the life Pokemon in the air. Thanks. He wheezed. No prob. Don't sweat it, Mew chirped happily. Now, where's that little ankle bitter? They hovered around in the air, Mew holding Xerneas with her psychic grip while the other 3 busied themselves by looking around in search for the little poor child. In the back, They could hear rumbling coos as Darkrai gently held on 6 round eggs of different designs, accompanied by his sister's amused laugh as she looked at her brother. He was always weak to children after all. It's a shame that he was the one they feared the most. What's with that crowd? Xerneas pointed to a rather dingy-looking alleyway with little to no lighting where cheers and roars seemed to echo around the village. They were aware that the village is partying for some uninteresting reason they didn't care, but partying in an alley? Peeved. Bullshit. Mew was about to open her mouth to let out a humorous joke when Jirachi shot past her with a speed that would make Latios proud. On her face was an expression of abject horror. Without question, the other followed suit. Jirachi, what's wrong? Cresselia asked, a frown marring her pretty face. They're at it again. He shouted at them. They're torturing the child again, she said. It was enough a trigger for them to make them move as fast as they could with all due haste. The distance did nothing to slow them down any. They were legendaries for a reason. Even the slowest of them, i.e. Heatran, was fast enough to challenge many other. Such, they took no more than 10 minutes to cross the distance. What they saw triggered varying response. Mew growled as her psychic power flared, causing street lamps and windows to shatter without a reason. Jirachi balled his small fists. Their gray color turned milk white as he watched the inhumanity of these people. Xerneas was already charging a moonblast, his horn glowing with ethereal power so strong, Yveltal will feel pity for whoever the attack was addressed to. Cresselia and Darkrai was eyeing the human with unholy gleam in their eyes. Cresselia's glare said that they will have no help from her while Darkrai's practically oozed, you will feel pawn. Brother, she called. Yes, dear sister, Darkrai replied. Would you be so kind as to curse them with your nightmares? She asked, voice deceptively calm and pleasant. There was no need for answer, they knew what it was going to be. Nevertheless, he humored them. With pleasure. Raising both hands into the air, Darkrai gathered hundreds of small black orbs which he then combined together to form what looked to be a boulder-sized ball of darkness. With a flex of his finger, the giant black orb compressed on itself, becoming much smaller in comparison to its previous size. Dark void. He threw the ball gleefully, waiting as the ball exploded, forming a giant dome of darkness, trapping the people inside it. As they fell, dead asleep to the world, Darkrai forced his energy into his passive skill. In mere seconds, they were already writhing on the ground, screaming and crying their lungs off. Mew didn't even bat an eye at the tortured screams they released from their throat. For her, this is their payment, a payment which was long overdue. She wasted no time in taking the blonde boy with her. Levitating his malnourished body was easier than moving even Shaman. Calling some of her powers, she called out, "Teleport," and they were all gone. In a flash of amethyst light, the group of 5 Pokémon and 1 human child disappeared from the scene. Somewhere quite far from the crime scene, exactly inside of a small, old and all-around dead-looking apartment, a flash of amethyst light appeared and from it come out the ragtag group of 6. Xerneas. Get to your job. Heal the boy. Jirachi barked his orders and Xerneas nodded, setting down to work on repairing the malnourishment and wounds littering the body of the barely 6-year-old. Darkrai, get out and hide in the shadows. Watch for intruders. Darkrai silently nodded and sank into the ground. Cresselia. Give him a good dream. Cresselia's eye glowed purple, trying to connect with the dreams of the little boy. Mew. I'm on it. She grabbed the eggs from the Jirachi and immediately searched for the cupboard to put the in and keep them warm. Dreamscape connection established. Stable, Cresselia reported. Wounds healed. Malnourishment still being treated. Xerneas reported as well. I'll heal him and give him some more, he said. No immortality, Xerneas. Arceus will be mad if you gifted any human immortality. Mew chastised the deer of life, pointing her stubby arms at him. Understood? Yes, mother. He said sarcastically. Xerneas was done in the next 15 minutes, the body of the child was no longer bone skinny. It was now healthy with meat and muscle appropriate for a child his age. His wounds were gone, replaced by unblemished skin, soft and untainted. The deer of life then walked around the room, using his power to repair the apartment room to the best of his ability. Using her psychic powers, Mew stripped him off his clothes and set him into the bathroom to clean his dirty body. Another 15 minutes and she was done. Shall we wake him? Cresselia asked, noting and enjoying how the child's lips quirked up in a smile as he enjoyed the dream she planted upon him. She knew that he was dreaming of swimming in the middle of a sea made of ramen broth, as wacko as it sounds. With a mental command, she forced him out of his dreamscape and practically slammed him into consciousness. Wha? He sat ramrod straight on his bed, eyes still blurry. "Ah. I was gonna use Xerneas' horns to poke him until he wakes up," Mew moaned. "My horns aren't poking stick," Xerneas muttered with a huff. "Oh. The lad's awake," he said, purple eyes warmly gazing at the poor faded child. "How are you feeling, lil one?" he asked kindly. "I feel better than ever, TT Ibeo." Naruto nodded furiously as he flexed his arms and swung his leg around. "Anyo. What are you guys?" Naruto asked, nervously eyeing the 5 non-humans in his room. "There's a blue deer with rainbow horns, a flying child with stars on the head, a pink cat-mouse thingy, and a weird swan." "Hello, Naruto. We all here are what is known as Pokemon. My name is Jirachi. That pink bundle of energy is Mew. That beautiful thing over there is Cresselia. And then the blue stag over there is Xerneas. He is the one that healed your wounds, so you ought to thank him," Jirachi introduced cheerfully, waving at him while gesturing around the room all the while. "There's another one outside, his name's Darkrai." "Thank you so much, Shika-chan." "One," Naruto beamed with a smile so bright, it might as well be the sun who's smiling at them. The blonde aspiring ninja rose from his bed and gave the legendary of life a hug which earned him a smile from the blue deer. "It is quite all right," Xerneas replied as he nuzzled the child. "Now, I've repaired the building for you. The heater is no longer broken, so you can now take a warm bath and relax. The walls and floors are no longer filled with cracks and moss, among other things," Xerneas listed off. "Whoa." He gaped in awe. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," he chanted as he hugged the deer closer to himself. "Naruto, why don't you open that wardrobe of yours?" Xerneas nudged the small blonde boy on his feet, and when he realized that the boy was tugging at his fur, he complied and went there with him. "Open it. Come on, there's a present there for you," he said. At the word, present, Naruto immediately tore open the door to his wardrobe and froze in his track. "Eggs? Pokemon eggs." Jirachi grinned as he flew at him. "Remember, you prayed for a family once, right?" At his nod, Jirachi continued. "Well, you father and mother is no longer with us. So, I decided that maybe we could give you little babies of your own to care. Like brothers and sisters. Well, they might not be human, but it's love that truly matters, right?" Jirachi smiled at him as he twirled in front of him while gesturing at the egg. Naruto lunged at him, hugging him in his arms, and sobbed as tears flowed down his face. His mask of happiness cracking and finally falling as he heard all that statement. Thank you, he whispered as he hugged the little pixie close to him. "I will take care of them. I will take care of my baby brothers and sisters, Dadbeo," he declared. Good. Cresselia smiled at him. Pulling out a book from nowhere, Mew flew up to him. Here, Naru-chan. This is the manual to take care of the eggs. They will hatch in 3 months' time. Take care, all right?" she said, and gave him the manual book. "Now we will have to go back home. Bye, little Naru-chan," Mew called. "Will you guys visit again?" he asked. "When the babies hatched we will," Cresselia replied with a smile. "Until then, goodbye." In a flash of amethyst light, the 4 legendary Pokemon disappeared from the room, and the 5th outside disappeared as well. Naruto wiped his tears and grinned happily. He took all the eggs from the wardrobe and lined them on his bed with him and covered them in blankets. "Good night, brothers, sisters." He smiled and drifted off to sleep, dreaming of playing with little monsters in a garden full of flowers. The sun shined through the openings in the window curtain, spreading lines of warm light into the room and inadvertently waking up a certain blonde Jinchuriki. Groaning, Naruto opened one bleary, sleepy and half-conscious blue eyes to gaze hatefully into the warm sunlight. "I curse you and your sleep-depriving light, oh sun," he grumbled before pulling back the cover and snuggled cutely into it, like a little kitten, and hugged a large round thing to his side. And immediately woke up. Naruto sat straight on attention in his springy, comfortable bed. He blinked once, twice, then he turned his head around blankly into the crappy space he called his home. The cracked, old and peeling walls he was so accustomed to for the last year was now as good-looking and strong-looking as a new building. His furniture, which was always creaking with the slightest of movement as if it was going to break by just standing there, was now as good and polished as new, branded pieces. His clothes were clean. His room was tidy. Everything he had come to be accustomed with for the last year was gone for good, and in its place was what many would call a first-class apartment room. "I must be dreaming," he muttered as he rubbed his eyes, unwilling to believe the sweet reality he was now enjoying. He turned to his bedside table and saw a certain familiar leather-bound red book with Pokemons and how to care for them, emblazoned proudly on its cover. Nope. I'm not dreaming. He grinned a 1,000-watt, shit-eating grin as he threw his covers away to see what kind of thing his eggs had hatched into. The 3 months after he had received the eggs had been grueling and tiresome for the blonde Jinchuriki. He followed each steps the books given to him by the legendaries stated. From taking the fur walk, a bath, a sunbathe, and even reading storybooks for them. Now the effort paid off. On his bed, curling beside him, was a small bipedal dragon-like Pokemon, with the primary color of blue. It has a big mouth filled with sharp teeth, no neck, and arms that start at the outer edges of its jaws. A red underbelly stretches from its abdomen to the bottom of its jaw. It has 2 horns on the side of its head resembling a jet engine, each with light blue stripes on the middle. It has a single light blue stripe wrapping around its back and a large fin sprouted from his head. Fuwa, it yawned, huge jaws opening to take in the air. The small hatchling blinked cutely at him and wobbled over through the bed to his leg and started to rub its cheek with his leg. Naruto resisted the urge to squeal at him. He was not going to squeal now or ever. He was about to take the round blue Pokemon into a hug when he saw the little hatchling had opened his huge maw to take a bite out of him. Wah! Chomp! Asterisk! Gya! He screamed as he waved his leg up and down in an effort to pry the maw biting him off. The only thing it did was making the baby Pokemon squeal and laugh, inadvertently grinding its teeth into him. Ouch! Ouch! Can you please let go of your big brother? It hurts. Chi-Ibeo. He whined as he stopped waving his legs, realizing the futility of his effort. The small Pokemon pulled its jaw from him and settled back down on the soft bed, clapping his hands as he laughed while looking at Naruto. Naruto smiled sheepishly at him and took the red leather-bound book by the cover to see what kind of Pokemon he is. Gible, the land shark Pokemon. Gible is a small, bipedal dragon-like Pokemon that is primarily blue. It has a big mouth filled with sharp teeth, no neck, and arms that start at the outer edges of its jaws. A red underbelly stretches from its abdomen to the bottom of its jaw. Gible has 2 horns that resemble jet or plane engines, each with a light blue stripe in the middle. It has a single light blue stripe wrapping around its back. The fin on its head is strong enough to carry a person. Gible appears to be a good digger, making deep holes for homes in caverns. It enjoys play fighting with other members of its species. It has tremendously strong jaws that it uses to bite enemies. However, when biting, it often hurts itself because of clumsiness. Gible is a dual-element Pokemon. Its type is Dragon and Ground. Gibles possesses the ability Sand Veil and Rough Skin. So you're a Gible, huh? Naruto asked as he softly patted Gible's fin. I think I'll name you Ryu. Since you're a strong dragon type. Do you like it? He asked, and at the Gible's enthusiastic nod, he beamed. Yosh, now your name is Ryu. 1. Dadbeo. He picked him off his bed and threw the small Pokemon to the air, laughing as the small Pokemon tried to fly by stupidly waving his pudgy hands. Now, where's your other brothers? He asked. The newly baptized Ryu did not answer and instead wiggled away from his grip and wobbled out of his room. Phooey. He pointed outside. Naruto dashed out only to get himself kicked back into his room by another blue blur. Naruto looked up to see a small, blue, canine Pokemon. It has black legs and torso, a blue tail, and a yellow collar. It has rounded bumps on the backs of its forepaws. It has a black mask and red eyes. It stands on its toes instead of its entire foot. Aw, he huffed. Whoa. Naruto gasped as he saw the blue canine-like bipedal Pokemon sitting on his chest. You must be a fighting type. The book says all of the Pokemon under this type is strong physically. Naruto grinned at the small blue Pokemon who ducked his head and turned his head away, a tinge of pink on his face. Wait. Let me check what kind you're. Opening the book, Naruto looked on the page that held the picture of the blue canine Pokemon. Riolu, the emanation Pokemon. Riolu is a small, blue, canine Pokemon. It has black legs and torso, a blue tail, and a yellow collar. It has rounded bumps on the backs of its forepaws. It has a black mask and red eyes. It stands on its toes instead of its entire foot. It is sensitive to a special type of energy called aura. However, it does not have the ability to fully use these powers, although it can still emanate these waves to communicate and sense them, albeit only in ripples. Like almost all fighting-type Pokemon, Riolu naturally has superhuman strength, stamina, and endurance and is capable of making long journeys on foot in a short amount of time. It is a playful, energetic, and loyal Pokemon. Riolu is a single-element Pokemon. It has the type Fighting and possesses the ability Steadfast, Inner Focused and the hidden ability Trickster. A Riolu. Awesome. Hey, do you think you can teach me how to feel aura? Naruto asked enthusiastically as he rose up from his sleeping position on the floor. The Riolu kept silent and merely inclined his head to the side. You don't understand me. I guess I have to teach you how to speak then. He turned his face to scrutinize the small blue canine. Blue eyes stared at deep red orbs and finally he grinned. I think I will call you Shinku, too, from now on, he said, taking delight on how the small canine jumped happily and clapped his paws at his own name. A splash from the bathroom brought him from his delight. Taking both the baby Pokemon that was his little brother's, Naruto made his way to the bathroom to see a small blue Pokemon playing with the shower. The Pokemon is a quadruped, frog-like Pokemon. It has light blue skin, white hands, and a dark blue stripe from the center of its oval head to its nose. Its eyes, which have yellow sclera, black irises, and white pupils, protrude vertically from its head due to their size. From its back and chest, he produces a mane of bubbles and 2 of said bubbles was produced from his nose. Is that a? Naruto racked his brain, trying to remember the name of the species that resembled his wallet, Gama-chan. With a snap of his finger and a metaphorical light bulb, Naruto grinned as he pointed at the laughing frog-like Pokemon in the shower stall. I know. A Froka, he said. At this, the frog turned his head and saw the figure of the blonde and curiously hopped over to him. Hey Froka, I'm your Oni-chan. This too is your brother's too. Shinku, Ryu say hello. The 3 of them waved at the small frog Pokemon. Naruto grinned and pulled his trusted Pokemon encyclopedia and turned to the page depicting Frokis. Froka, the bubble frog Pokemon. Froka is a quadruped, frog-like Pokemon. It has light blue skin, white hands, and a dark blue stripe from the center of its oval head to its nose. Its eyes, which have yellow sclera, black irises, and white pupils, protrude vertically from its head due to their size. Froka produces a large mane of bubbles from its chest and back and has 2 small bubbles on its nose. The delicate yet flexible bubbles, called frubbles, reduce the damage Froka takes from attacks. It has 3 fingers and 2 toes on its hands and feet. Despite its carefree attitude, it is vigilant of its surroundings. Froka is both light and strong, making it capable of jumping incredibly high. Froka is a single-element Pokemon. Its type is water and possesses the ability Torrent as well as the hidden ability Protean. Froka smiled at them before pulling the other 2 baby Pokemon who had wiggled free of Naruto's grip on them into the shower stall to play with shower. However, Naruto noticed that Ryu was running away and he had to slap himself from remembering that Ryu had ground as one of his types and thus, naturally afraid of water. Don't worry Ryu. I'll bathe with you later and I promise it wouldn't hurt. He cooed softly as he patted the scared baby's trembling body. The 2 left the water type and fighting type in the bathroom in search for the other 3 hatchlings. Well, since the other 3 of our siblings hasn't hatched yet, we couldn't do much. In the end, Naruto settled in making breakfast for all of them, which means ramen for all. Naruto was positively grinning when Ryu and Shinku ate the food worshippingly, as if the food was the holy grail of all dishes in the world. On the other hand, he was quite sad that Froka didn't share their love for the food of the gods. Speaking of Froka. Right. I haven't gave you a name, right? Naruto placed a hand on his chin as he adopted the standard thinking position. I think I'll call you Kororo, Tt Ibeo. He nodded to himself, satisfied to find a name for the little blue bubble-covered frog. Said frog smiled at him and rubbed the back of his head happily. Yes, life was good for him. Origin Tower Xerneas was known as being one of the most cool-headed legendary. His habit of reading one's emotion or line of thought with just a glance at said person rarely made him nervous or getting shocked. So, it was quite the funny sight for Yveltal to see his goody twin brother to sweat a gallon of cold liquid from his hide. It was made better as he looked at the other 4 right beside his currently nervous brother, Jirachi, Mew, Cresselia and Darkrai. For a fact, Darkrai was almost impossible to be intimidated. That skill failed horribly in the face of the embodiment of fear himself. But right now, one could see the nervous glint in his glowing icy blue eyes as he forced himself to look away from the other legendary, especially Zygarde. Yveltal stifled a laugh. Again, he told himself, he was reminded of just how annoying his sister could be. She was, to be bluntly put, a shut-in antisocial being with an unholy fascination that bordered on manic interest for machines, especially those used to spy and hack into things. Things that was better kept secret or protected by the word privacy. She was nosy like that. The only one she never spied at was probably Arceus himself. Everyone was envying that of him. Which brought him to this matter now. It was Zygarde's spying habit, after all, that brought light to an incident. What was it about giving Pokemon eggs into another dimension filled with superpowered human? Arceus asked evenly, his tone not showing even a hint of his emotion. Just bland and flat, he turned his ethereal green eyes to the 5 guilty suspects. I believe there will be an interesting story behind it, he said, eyes focusing on a certain star-headed wishmaker. Jirachi, you may begin your tale, he said. He gulped a bit. Well, it begins like this, and so, for the next half an hour, Jirachi retold all things regarding the incident dubbed by Zygarde as egg smuggling incident. His trip with Palkia to other dimensions for sightseeing, how he met Naruto, the little boy whose life was made so miserable by a power he don't wish to hold, and many other things. And he went all tears and hugged me to death. Jirachi finished with a fond smile at his white face. Honestly, you guys will like him. The kid is very pure and innocent. He sighed with a shake of his head. So, Xerneas drawled. Are we getting off the hook with no punishment now? He asked, begged. Arceus might be patient and fatherly, but that doesn't mean he was lenient. Damn, he was strict. Yes, the 5 of them cheered while Yveltal tsked unhappily. And no. They groaned and Yveltal grinned, mentally tallying a score under his name. Arceus grinned, at least as close as it was to grinning considering he lacked any visible mouth. Who was it that gave you this idea again, Jirachi? At this question, Jirachi pointed one innocent finger at Xerneas, who was paling considerably while glaring daggers at the manically smiling Yveltal. Xerneas. Fitting I suppose. Very well, Xerneas. Young Uzumaki will be your ward from now on, he said with a final nod. Xerneas spluttered. Wait, what? You heard me. Arceus waved one of his hooves at him. Take care of that boy. He is going to raise Pokemons, meaning he is going to be a trainer. All trainer needs education on how things are done, and considering what Palkia told us of this world, there is a chance that the hatchlings could get killed in one of his missions. There's where you come. You could train him to be a good trainer while his sensei will teach him how to be a good fighter. As usual, his reasonings were full with logics that one could not have done anything but agrees. But Mew gave him a manual book. He whined. While he mght be good with kids, he never really raised one. He does not have kids, surely, he was bright enough to follow the guides, he pointed. A fine point. He sighed in relief. Which I should reject. He slumped in his seat. Textbook knowledge are hardly any help in the heat of a fight, in which you will be consumed by adrenaline that made you unable to focus on those textbook skills. No, a good trainer needs a good experience. Now, are you going to present any more arguments which I could nullify perfectly fine, or will you take this responsibility? He asked, head high in the air with smugness so thick you could cut it. Okay. He sighed in defeat. Lord, Cresselia began, Firstly, call me Arceus. How many times do I have to remind you? He shook his head in exasperation. And of course, you may talk. He ended with a nod at her. Of course, Arceus. She nodded. Now, as I was saying, we're all a part of this little plan. Every one of us 5 took part in it. Why is it that Xerneas is the only one punished? She asked, the other nodding their heads to her question. Simple. Arceus said. Nothing, no reason, he shrugged. It was the loudest shriek of shock everyone has ever heard of in the history of the legendary's existence. Konohagakure Ryu the hatchling gibble munched happily on a piece of wood, something Ni-san called a hopstick? Chopster? Something like that. He laughed as he finally managed to snap the piece of wooden cutlery in half with his teeth. Yes. He was proud to see his teeth was getting stronger. He was about to break the already snapped pieces into more smaller pieces when Shinku bounded over to him with Kororo in tow. What you doing? Please note that this is one of those moments when one imagines that babies has an entire language of their own. Shinku asked curiously, hands crossed on his chest. Chomping? Ryu replied with a large fanged smile. He offered one of the snapped sticks to him with his pudgy short blue hands, face ever so innocent. Want try? He asked. No thank you. Shinku denied, a sweat drop falling from his head. Where Ni-san go? He tilted his head to the side, wondering where his kind and funny brother is. His brother was fun to be around and it wasn't so boring with him. Besides, he could cook that wonderful noodle thingy that pops his taste buds. His Ruto Ni is awesome. Out. Kuroro answered as he pointed to the large slab of wood his brother called door. Want follow, brother? The decision was made as fast as one could say bingo. With some punch from Shinku, a hole was ripped open from the piece of wood. The three hatchlings stepped out from the hole and immediately showed their childish curiosity of the outside world. Whoa! They gasped in awe as they saw many of not brother but close. Let's go. They walked down the stairs, wisely ignoring how Ryu snapped a piece of iron railing from the side of the stairs and nibbled on it like a baby would a biscuit. They arrived at the bottom shortly after and silently made their way to the bushes, not sure what the crowds of not brother but close will do to them if they saw them. They made it to one of the bushes near and immediately took off together, walking like small boys' brigade. Trying to keep close to each other, Shinku took hold of Kuroro's arm while Kuroro took hold of Ryu's one free hand while the other was used to grab various objects he found interesting. Ryu sang a stupid song for them as they walked by the forested area, trying to hide foam-prying eyes. Ryu, can sniff brother? Kuroro asked as he turned to face the horribly singing dragon type. Can? Ryu took a whiff from the air and dashed up to the front. Come on, he dashed fast. The round shark-like dragon-type Pokemon lead them to a crowded stand in the middle of the village. Hidden behind one of the trash cans, the little babies watched the stand as people come and goes behind its curtain. Another sniff of the air and a literal flood of drool flowed off of Ryu's mouth. He turned to his other brothers and looked at them with hungry eyes. Eyes of a predator, as they say. Nose exhaling whiff of steam, Ryu jabbed a finger at the stand. Ramen. The bubble frog and emanation Pokemon tilted their heads to the side in confusion, although the latter had glazed hungry eyes as he did so. Ramen? They asked together. Ni-san love ramen, Ryu said, hands cutely on his side. He should there, he pointed towards the ramen stand. Now, there are three kinds of people out there. Those who knows logic and focus on the objective, Kuroro. Those who are trapped between desire and logic, Shinku. And those who lost themselves in their desire. Ryu. Kuroro rolled his large yellow eyes at the two of them. Clearly, they prefer the smell of ramen than searching for Ni-chan. However, before he could voice his mind, Ryu had settled himself between him and Shinku and opted to drag them into the stand. As they entered, they were hit by the intoxicating smell of ramen broth. Well, Kuroro doesn't seem to mind it, but the same couldn't be said to the other two. Kuroro entertained the thought of putting a bucket under their mouth and see just how much they could fill with their drool. Kuroro shook his head with a sigh and let them, who in his mind are children, to goof around. Ryu called up as he climbed over one of the seats. Kuroro stood below, mentally counting from 1 to 3 to see if there will be any of the most awaited explosion. 3, 2, 1. Kya. The pretty Oni-san in apron screamed. Kuroro and Shinku became a witness to human ingenuity and adaptability as the girl grabbed the nearest tool she could get, which was actually a heated spatula, and used it to slap away the small dragon-type Pokemon. The force of the attack was so strong that Ryu was sent out with that one hit. That's that, Kuroro said, clapping his webbed finger as he went out of the store, intent on saving his cheek from the fire spatula slap. Let's go. 0000 octal 0. Where we? It was after they dragged the downed Ryu that they finally stopped goofing around and actually searched their older brother. Ryu sniffed the air again, pointedly ignoring the sweet fragrance of ramen broth in fear of getting slapped by the fire spatula slap. He then, like before, led them into some sort of place. This place was large and white. There are many see-through doors as well. They mean windows. Dunno. Shinku replied and again assumed leading position. Let's go. They started their venture into the unknown and alien place many child would dare not visit. The soil in which tears of blood flowed like glorified fountain as adults whipped the child with paper fans made of assignments and tests. The place many would call Ninja Academy. 0000 octal 0. Uruka has seen some strange things in life. Heck, he has seen the Kyuubi in all its demonic glory slaughter Konoha's shinobi forces with a swish of its tail and lived to tell the tale. However, not in all his career as a shinobi has he ever witnessed the strange thing he was now looking at. Standing in front of the door to his class was a totem made of strange small creature of various color. The one in the lowest position was a blue and black bipedal canine who seemed to be in little to no trouble lifting the other two above him. The second one was a round stubby-looking dragon thingy who kept on grinning as he blabbered on. The last one was a bubble-covered blue frog who seemed to be searching something in the classroom. Air. Uruka was sure that it was a practiced reflex, else they wouldn't be able to turn and face him with that unnerving synchronization. The crimson, dark, and yellow eyes bored onto him with caution. Ra. Karu, RRRR. Iruka's sweat dropped. He silently excused himself from them and walked into the door, ignoring their intensely scrutinizing gaze as he opened the door and entered the room. The three baby Pokémon shrugged as they, one by one, made their way down back into the ground and entered the classroom. Riolu being the last closed the door with a loud slam. Iruka, meanwhile, tried desperately to ignore their existence. And failed miserably to do so. He turned to them with a dry smile and a twitching eyebrow which Ryu pointed his hands on, saying, "It's twitchy." All the while. "What are you things doing here?" he asked. Shinku, Ryu, Kiro, what are you guys doing here? The three baby Pokémon and one human turned their heads sharply, as if shocked, to the one that had addressed the three little creatures. As one, they smiled and dashed over to the one particular blonde whiskered boy. Within arm range, they all jumped to the air and decided to do the fearsome flying tackle hug all younger siblings did to their elder. Ni-cha. They called up and crashed the blonde with the full brunt of their tackle. The poor academy student never stood a chance against the combined might of 3 tackles from the babies. Itai, guys, what are you doing here? Naruto asked, trying to stand with all of them sitting on top of him. Not that I mind, but... Did you just call me Ni-chan? At their nods, he smiled and picked all 3 of them up and twirled around happily, ignoring the bystanders and the peanut galleries. I'm so happy, he declared. Ehem. What fake cough? Naruto stopped his twirl and turned to see Iruka-sensei giving him a pointed look. Naruto? He called, voice deceptively calm with just a hint of a growl behind. Yay? He asked, the 3 baby Pokémon looking at the one disturbing, in their eyes was, their family bonding time. Tell me, just what exactly is this dark emotion running in me? He asked, a too innocent smile plastered on his face as he gripped his papers. Sexual frustration. At this half of the class, Iruka included, face faulted. What? You did try to get a Yame-ne to notice you, he said, tilting his head to the side as if confused by their reaction. Stupidity meter. 40%. It's rage. There it is, the typical big head jutsu his teacher was famous about. It practically made your head grow big and tall, ridiculously so, and made your voice loud enough to burst an eardrum. What insanity has possessed you to bring those things to school and cuddle with it in class? The young teacher growled in fury. And what does this have to do with a Yame? Stop changing topics and explain what they are, he said. What do you mean? I know you like a Yame-ne. You've been trying to make your move to her. You're so obvious, Iruka-sensei. Naruto laughed as the instructor's face heated up into a blush worthy enough to challenge the tomatoes. Stupidity meter. 80%. Ah, I'm not listening anymore. Iruka covered his ears and screamed to block off the sound of Naruto's taunts. Stupidity meter. Unable to measure. Error. The class could do nothing as the Dobi continued his taunts and their teacher singing some kind of butchered lullaby to block off his voice. It was only thanks to Shino and Hinata that they got to make the blonde stop and help their instructor regain his composure and restart the class. He looked at Naruto annoyedly and decided to let it go. For now, and focused on the matter that interested him the most. So, Naruto. What are they? This, Naruto pointed to Ryu who was munching softly on his finger, is Ryu. He is a Gibble. This, Naruto pointed to Shinku and Kuroro who was simply sitting in his lap side by side, is Shinku and Kuroro. A Riolu and a Froki respectively. He introduced, guys, say hello to Iruka-sensei and my classmates. He instructed. Unable to talk much just yet, the 3 of them just smiled and waved at them all. They just hatched this morning and I've not taught them anything aside from Oni-chan. So pardon them, he said as he fondly patted Shinku's head, which caused him to purr in enjoyment. HMPH. They're nothing special, since Dobi's the one finding them they must be some kind of lowlife. Sasuke commented in his corner, causing girls to swoon all over him and agreeing left and right. Urusei. Teme. Naruto growled angrily at him. Ryu barred his teeth at Sasuke. While he doesn't understand what the last Uchiha spoke about, Ryu still disliked him. To the dragon type, his looks is irritating and deserved a facial operation a la Gibble. He stalked forward, teeth bared and claws twitching, effectively showing them his most fearsome looks. Yes. That's it, ugly not brother but close, fear me. Shinku jumped down from his position on Naruto's lap and glared his crimson eyes at Sasuke, unknowingly flaring his aura into the room. Unlike Ryu, He understands some bits of it, not enough to gain the big picture, but just enough of a glimpse. What he knew though, was that he was mocking them. No, unacceptable. Shinku stalked forward, cracking his knuckles as he did so. Oh, he was gonna savor every scream this emo bastard produce. Unlike the other two, Kuroro's expression was schooled. Being the smartest of the lot, he understood almost everything the black-haired Uchiha spoke and he cursed him for it. Oh, he was going to regret ever uttering those words. With eyes gleaming with malicious intent, he flexed his wee bed hands, intent on giving him the hardest slap ever. The three baby Pokemon glanced at each other in perfect sync and as one nodded before they jumped together into the last Uchiha. Too shocked, the Uchiha could do nothing as the three menace descended upon him. Gible aimed at Sasuke's right hand, proudly opening his large jaw and bit him hard. The next onslaught came from an axe kick to the head, performed so perfectly by Shinku, that sent him tumbling down to the floor. As soon as he was laying down, Kuroro joined in and slapped him repeatedly on the face with his webbed finger. The resounding smack echoed around the classroom as the students watched with fascination at the masterful teamwork. Ah! The best music of the world. Naruto sighed happily. The young Riolu, standing high in the chair, stuck out a pose that clearly intended to look down on the Uchiha before he jumped and delivered a dropkick. His super-enhanced strength made Sasuke double over and cough up bile. After that, Gible let go of his hand and jumped back, as did Kuroro, who has found that his cheek was boring to slap. Shinku grabbed a fistful of his shirt and pulled his head up to look him in the eye. He growled and headbutted him hard. Sasuke fell unconscious after that last attack. Shinku huffed and nodded, satisfied to teach the emo to know his place. Sasuke-kun. One girl screamed. No way. Another joined. What did those things did to him? Another said. The females glared hard at the three of the hatchling Pokemon who stood deviantly and glared back at them. Suddenly, the males on the class began to clap their hands and roared together, singing their praise and admiration for the hatchlings. Haha. Finally someone put that stuck-up bastard in his place. Kiba roared happily. Oi, Dobie, you never told us your lil bro's this awesome, another classmate said. Yeah, another male agreed. All hail Shinku, Kuroro and Ryu. That was the start of the fan group dedicated to the three young Pokemon. Naruto smiled. It seems many liked his lil bros just fine. Because of them, some people even want to socialize with him. While the Pokemon seems to be the female enemy number one, they gained followers in the male and was labeled as the male justice enforcer. Peeved. Funny. Naruto. Iruka called, a smile on his face. Naruto prepared himself to get a praise for raising such a talented brother when he got a smack to the head. His little brothers shared the same fate not long after. You four are on detention, he roared. However, the fact that he and his brother are on detention didn't bother him at all, and through the chaos in the class between the male faction and the female faction, the light laughter of the four siblings seemed to carry on in the wind. Indeed. Naruto thought to himself. Life is looking up for me, Datbeo. Chapter 2. Xerneas and Cresselia in Konoha. Xerneas huffed silently as he made his way down the path leading to the gate of Konohagakure no Sato. Beside him, Cresselia smiled at him apologetically, as if begging forgiveness for some kind of grave sin she committed upon his person. He sighed as he silently pulled on the wooden caravan containing his and Cresselia's thing. The massive size of the caravan and the weights it has bothered little to nothing for him in his supernatural strength. Also, he looked down at himself and again sighed. Having only 2 feet sucks. I don't think it's healthy to sigh so much, Xerneas. Cresselia chided him, sounding like a concerned mother. Are you tired? Do you want me to pull that caravan for you? She asked, stopping in her steps and turned to him with concerned purple eyes. Yes, people. For this occasion, Arceus has gifted them both the body of a human. Xerneas has the appearance of a young man in his early to mid-20s with short and neat bluish-black hair. He has dark blue eyes just like his Pokemon self that look so deep you can feel yourself sinking inside those orbs. He has a rather tall build with broad shoulder and toned muscles. His skin was slightly tanned, showing that he spent a healthy amount of time outside. He wore a dark blue turtleneck and long-sleeved shirt followed by a pair of Enbu-style trousers. All in all, his human appearance would be described as stunningly handsome. Cresselia's appearance was no slouch either. Arceus certainly went all out on creating the perfect form for them. Cresselia possessed a long light blonde hair which she braided into a thin long braid that fell down his back, held by a crescent moon hair clip. She possessed the same mesmerizing purple eyes as her Pokemon self. She has a pretty and soft white skin that made her almost otherworldly under the moonlight. Her body was rather generous in its development with all the curves and bust size of a model. She wore a lavender battle dress that hugged her body, showing her bewitching charm while hiding behind her powers. On her forehead, unlike her Pokemon self, was a crescent moon-shaped tattoo. For Xerneas, she was drop-dead gorgeous. Somehow, Yumi, I got a hunch that Arceus is laughing rather benevolently at us back in the tower. Xerneas muttered to himself. Anyway, no, I'm fine. I'm the male here and I can't let you take the burden. Just keep walking, I'm fine. Xerneas said, trying to reassure the lunar Pokemon turned human to keep walking and ignore his size. Also, it's Harutora Izumi now. Be careful and don't slip up, alright? Yes. I know. Cresselia, or Yumi as she is now known, nodded, a dusting of pink on her cheeks. Geez, males and their pride. I'm strong too, you know. She complained shyly as she covered her face with the sleeves of her battle dress. But, I do enjoy treated like a special lady every now and again. She muttered lowly, eyes looking anywhere but Xerneas' human form. However, Xerneas could hear what she said and smiled a bit at her. Oh, really? He teased. Can you say that louder? He asked. Oh geez. You were all stern and serene in the tower and you're teasing me now. How cruel, she pouted cutely at him. Sorry, I just can't resist, Xerneas, or rather, Harutora laughed a bit as she punched him playfully on the shoulder. Anyway, just remember that we're posing as a married couple in our time here until the unforeseeable future, he said awkwardly. Although, how we're gonna hide our chakra is still lost to me. I mean, we're legendaries with powers at least as strong as a cage-level ninja here, and my power level are as high as those of a Biju, he complained loudly. They had been informed by Arceus that the human in this realm possessed the same energy that the Pokemon in their world have and called it as chakra. The humans are very creative in their uses of the techniques they created too. Xerneas was quite interested in many of their jutsus, and promised to learn some of them too himself. About that, Yumi pulled a pair of matching black bracelet from the sleeves of her battle dress. Arceus gave these to me. Says something about helping manage our strength, she said as she handed him his bracelet. Resourceful as always, Harutora nodded appreciatively as he put on the piece of trinket on his right hand, feeling it blanket his aura and power, concealing them. Let's move faster, he said. Yes. Let's. Picking up their pace, it took them no longer than half an hour to finally reach the wooden gate of Konoha. It was quite impressive, they decided. Sinnoh and Kalos has nothing like these giant gates. As they passed, a pair of men, possibly ninja, approached them and halted the both of them in their tracks. Halt. State your name and business, the first man, a man with wild black hair and a bandage across his face, asked. Harutora stepped up as he left his hold on the caravan, letting it fall back to the ground with a thump. I'm Harutora Izumi and this is my wife Yumi Izumi. We're self-taught ninjas. We're here to search for sanctuary and join the ranks to get a permanent job. He answered smoothly, nodding to himself as if satisfied. Very well, follow us to talk to the Hokage. They followed them without a question as they began to lead them through the village with a sedate pace. Harutora took his time looking at the village and its people, having denied that chance when he first visited, either by the darkness of night or his anger at the abusive morons they called as villagers. He absently looked around, scouting the area they were in as if he was only a curious citizen. He looked over at Cresselia, silently telling himself to stop focusing on her womanly charms, and kept an eye on her. The monotonous silent walk was ended as they arrived in a tall red building with the kanji of fire bared proudly in its front walls. The two guards turned around to face them. This is the Hokage Tower where you will talk with the Hokage about your citizenship here. Come on. He then walked in. They shrugged and followed. The Hokage's office was quite spacious, Yumi thought to herself. They had to wait for quite a while before they were given the green light to enter. Well, at least the secretary was polite and professional enough, unlike some other kunoichi. Yumi gritted her teeth and clenched her fists as she remembered how some of them giggled. For Arceus, they giggled. At Xerneas. Wait. Was this jealousy? What was wrong with her? While inside she was screeching and screaming, she managed to put a blank face in reality. Good afternoon. The Hokage, an old man with more to be desired height, greeted with a polite smile. Thank you for bringing the guests to me, Katetsu. You may leave. With a nod, the dark-haired gatekeeper left with a burst of smoke and a swirl of leaf. Now then, I believe you wanted to join Konoha's military? He asked. Yes. I'm Harutora Izumi and this is my wife, Yumi Izumi. He reintroduced himself smoothly, looking all the more like the usual Xerneas. We're self-taught. Self-taught? Hokage asked, skepticism deep in his tone. Interesting. Well, I'll need to assess your skills with tests later this week. When will you be free? The Hokage asked. No, all we need to do is set up our things in our new house. Harutora answered with a shake of his head. Hokage-sama, there are also things you need to know about. Here we go. He thought to himself, mentally preparing for the possible violence that will occur in just the count of minutes. Oh, what is it? The Hokage asked curiously, a single eyebrow quirked upwards questioningly. Have you heard of the creatures little Naruto-chan is taking care of? Yumi asked, finally speaking for the first time since the meeting started. Yes, it's been quite the talk. Wait, how did you know about that? And how did you even know about Naruto? He asked, standing up from his seat and taking a fighting stance, ready and prepared for violence despite his age. We're the ones who gave their eggs to him. You don't expect them to appear out of nowhere, did you? Harutora asked with an amused stare at the Hokage. Also, we don't need violence. Besides, I'm pretty sure Yumi can be more than a match for you. After all, we're not as human as you made us be. He smiled a thin smile and with a small flash of light, discarded his human form. Standing so regal in the middle of the room, the deer of life showed his true visage. His glowing rainbow horn gave him an ethereal appearance as he was hit by the light of the sun. He looked at the flabbergasted Hokage amusedly before turning to Yumi and beckoning her to do the same. Just like before, in a flash of light, gone was the beautiful form of Yumi, in its stead, was a floating swan-like being. Cresselia smiled a little in bemusement as the Hokage once again let his jaw drop to the floor. How that was possible was beyond her. What are you? The old man asked shakily, feeling the massive power of their chakra rolling off of them in waves. What is your business in this village? He asked, carefully choosing his words so as not to anger the being of massive power in front of him. Peace, Hokage. Xerneas spoke softly, silently expelling an aromatherapy into the room to calm the old man down after his panic attack at being in the same room with a being as strong as the Bijus while suppressing his own chakra at the same time. I'm known as Xerneas, the deer of life. My power grows and spreads upon the land at spring, that is why the wildlife blooms in spring. I'm known as Cresselia, the bringer of good sleep. She introduced herself. Naruto is made our ward. So, here we are, she explained. Made? By who? Why? The Hokage asked in shock. It happened because of Naruto's wish actually? Little Naruto made a wish, which was heard by one of our kin, Jirachi the Wishmaker. As his name implies, he grants wishes to people for 7 days after 1,000 years sleep. Naruto made a wish at one of these days and he decides that he would grant it. He consulted to me, Cresselia and several others on how to grant his wish. Somehow, it led to our father deciding that we're to take responsibility of him. Xerneas recounted sourly before looking at Cresselia. I have no skill in raising a child. Neither do I. Cresselia smiled, but there's always a first for everything, she smiled. I guess. Xerneas sighed. So, the both of you still wanted to join our ranks? The Hokage asked again. Because if so, I don't think I want to subject any of my shinobis to a fight with you, no matter how light it is. The Hokage said with a pitying shake of his head. Is it okay for you to be assigned as Junins, Xerneas Dono, Cresselia Dono? He asked politely. Smart move. We accept the position you offered us, Hokage-sama. However, simply refer to us by our human name and act as if we're your underling. It won't do to have the head of the village bows to those lower in the chains of command, no matter how strong they are. Xerneas smiled and in a flash of light, the two legendaries was back in their human form. It is a pleasure meeting with you, Hokage. Now, I think it is time to enact our plan. Plan? What plan? The Hokage asked. Harutora paused mid-step as he turned back to give a sideway glance to the Hokage and smirked. You'll just have to wait and see for yourself. Good day, Hokage-sama. With that, they left. 0000 octal 0. Ooh. The feeling of waking up in the morning is the worst. Especially when you were woken up by 3 little brother and 1 little sister passionately dancing to a haphazard rhythm while stepping all over your chest, face and stomach. Other than a special group of people, no one would be happy. However, while Naruto wasn't one of those special group of people, he was rather fond of the laughter that his 4 new siblings always made, so he just accepted it with a smile. It made him feel loved and a lot less lonely. Naruto blinked the sleep away from his eyes and forced himself to sit as slowly and softly as possible so as not to send his little duckies tumbling down to the cold hard floor. Looking down at his little siblings, who hadn't realized up until now that he was awake, Naruto called in a sleepy weak voice. "Oh. Why are you all dancing on me?" he asked. "Oh. Ni-chan." Only then did one of his little brothers, specifically a certain land shark, realize that he was AWOC and promptly tackled him in the chest. "You not wake up, Ryu wake you up," he said. "Gfuh," he wheezed as he was sent back to his soft and bouncy bed. "Ahaha. Gfuh, ahaha." Shinku laughed as he tried to mimic his wheeze. That was one of the few change that happened within the week. After the detention that day, Naruto has asked Iruka if he was able to help tutor his little brothers how to talk and read, since he himself wasn't all that good with kanji and all those mumbo-jumbo. Iruka, recognizing a chance when he sees one, decided to grab it and gave Naruto a condition to fulfill. Naruto groaned, feeling betrayed by his favorite teacher, but for his siblings, he will suck a study session with them for each day with no complaint. Since then, the trio of baby Pokemon was improving in leaps and bounds in terms of language. Kuroro and Shinku was almost able to speak the human language fluently, merely slipping on their words sometime, while Ryu, with his more childish mindset, had to thread slowly so as not to upset his head with all the new information. Another change was their new sister. Araltz, and as the book said, the feeling Pokemon. Naruto was feeling horribly happy and ecstatic as he saw the little psychic hug him in the leg. After all, being approached by Araltz was supposed to mean that you are of a kind and warm heart. He then spent the rest of the afternoon thinking of a name for her and decided that he'd call her Irie. Alright. Break it up. Ni-chan will turn into an angry monster and catch you now." As he said this, he purposefully sat himself up in his bed and growled while raising his hands in the air, trying to look bigger and scarier to the quartet. "Hurry! Ni-chan can't hold it in any longer." Gasp! Naruto blinked once as he realized that they weren't making the actual gasping sound but saying the word gasp itself in shock before they screamed and dashed out of his room. With a mischievous grin and a light chuckle, Naruto stood up from his bed and crept slowly and as silently as he can into the living room, where the quartet was no doubt taking refuge in. As he arrived there, he suppressed the urge to sweat drop as he saw the sofas and the tables was propped up to form some kind of fortress to protect them against his advance. He sighed. "Shinku, Ryu. Come on out, Ni-chan's fine now," he called softly. As they took a peek, Naruto gave them his trademark foxy grin and they slowly jumped out of the fortress. "Ni-san really fine now?" Shinku asked. "Yep. Yay," Ryu once again tackled him to the ground. "Ni-chan, let's eat ramen for breakfast." The little dragon suggested with vigor and his canine sibling nodded his head with just as much enthusiasm with steam pouring off his nose. "Ramen. All right." He smiled at the two, happily thanking whatever deity out there that he was given two sibling who understood the divinity of the food of God. "But first, let's get Kuroro and Irie." 0000 octal 0. The house looks good. Harutora and Yumi, the human form of Xerneas and Cresselia, stood outside a two-story house. The door was opened, allowing them to see how it looked on the inside, and personally, Harutora liked it. There was an abundance of free space in the house to prevent him from getting cooped up, and the windows was placed strategically to allow the most amount of light without being too overbearing. Apparently, the house was equipped with a really large bath, like those of the public ones. Yumi was positively squealing just now. "The best part?" Harutora smiled to himself as he turned around to look at the best part in the house. The garden. The large garden surrounding the house was practically a siren's call for him. There was large trees all over the place as well as flowers all set and ready to bloom. The garden also doubles as training ground for if they were to practice their skills. After all, they were posing as a shinobi and their ward was going to be one in just a couple of years. "How do you convince Arceus to buy this place for us?" Yumi asked as she absently pushed a sofa into the middle of the living room. Actually, Harutora then recounted his talk with Arceus and blushed. "It was him who offered me." Yumi raised one delicate eyebrow at him. "Oh really? Well, okay then." She smiled and went back to her job. He frowned a bit as he remembered his talk with the alpha Pokemon. He could just see it, the innocently smiling face of his. Laughing his soft laugh at his expense as he sipped a glass of A-grade wine delivered straight from Unova. He gritted his teeth, willing the mental image to disappear to the depths of the reverse dimension. No, he can't just marry Cresselia like that, with or without Darkrai's approval. Harutora pulled his mind out of its reverie. He shook his head as he stood beside Yumi, smiling slightly to himself as he wiped an imaginary sweat from his forehead and taking the sight of the house he was having. The plan that Arceus has cooked was quite good actually. By making his house an inn, he could ask the Hokage to convince Naruto to move out from that dreary backwater place he calls his home and have him with them in good care. Oh, by the way. Thank you for helping us, Grovyle, Arkan. The blue-haired man turned to face the two Pokémon he had brought with him. The two Pokémon nodded, giving a smile as they wiped the sweat off of their body and rested in a sofa. The two young Pokémon was one of the few that he trusted and decided that he might as well bring them with him. Arceus was, again, the one who convinced them to bring a Pokémon partner. Something about teaching the young hatchling the Pokémon moves and their heritage that Naruto most probably neglected in favor of cuddling. How can they teach him how to be a good trainer if they don't bring one themselves? It's no problem. The avian fossil Pokémon responded happily, waving his wing-like arm in a salute motion. We're happy to help. Grovyle just nodded, mouth too dry to speak anything beside panting in the heat, the plume of grass in his head looking weak and crumpled. Yumi giggled to herself as she gave a glass of cold water for the two Pokémon to drink, which they did most greedily. Yumi giggled to herself as she watched Arkan and Grovyle play a tug-o-war on the pitcher containing the cold water, each wanting to have the cold heaven for themselves. Harutora just sighed and shook his head silently as he enjoyed the show of Grovyle and Arkan exchanging witty remarks to each other. Don't worry, Xerneas, I believe you'll enjoy your time there with your little family, and who knows, maybe you'll feel like living there forever. Harutora laughed lightly as the voice of his father rang in his head, as if telling him that he was right all along. Perhaps. He muttered softly under his breath, smiling all the while. Perhaps, he might be right. 0000 Naruto grumbled as he stood in front of old man Hokage in his office, rubbing his sleep-deprived eyes and stifling huge yawns each 5 minutes. He glared angrily at an Anbu agent standing right behind him. The Anbu known as Cat simply snickered behind her mask and waved happily at the blonde, enjoying seeing his face turn red with annoyance, ready to throw a tantrum at her. She was saved, however, by the Hokage. Naruto-kun. He started. How have you been? He asked. Tired and sleepy. He grumbled. Why are you even waking me up at? He turned to look at the clock hanged in the room. -6:30 in the morning. I need my sleep, TT Ibeo, he complained. And I still want to cuddle with my little siblings. The Hokage, of course, has heard what kind of creature Naruto took as his younger sibling. The civilian council was ranting about them from the moment news of them came out, and then they were calling for blood when the news that they give the last Uchiha a beating. Really, what was so bad about pecking the last Uchiha down a peg or two? It's not like he's not going to get violent in his career later on, so why not prepare him a bit? It was only after Xerneas, Harutora and Yumi's arrival did he understand what the creatures were. Cat, please leave. The Anbu agent saluted before leaving in a leaf shushin. Naruto, you're moving out. Fine by M. Naruto paused, taking a minute to consider what he was hearing before finally giving his response. What? He shouted, sleepiness long forgotten. Why would I need to leave? I'm good enough in my apartment now. He doesn't want to leave the place that Shika-chan has gifted him, and it was really comfortable too. Why not? The Hokage asked pleasantly. Trust me, you'll like it there. Here's the address of the apartment you're going to stay in, and don't forget to be nice. He reminded. It won't do to have Naruto anger being as strong as a Biju in the middle of the village, no matter how lenient and patient they are. Oh, and also, please give these to them. Handing a bag of scroll to Naruto, Sarutobi proceeded to debrief him about the owner of the apartment. The bag contains copies of jutsu scrolls they were interested in learning based on their affinity. Of course, Sarutobi used this chance to strike a deal with them which, luckily for him, they agreed. For those jutsus they wanted to learn from the archives in Konoha, he wished to have a Pokemon partner to work with if there was ever an emergency. As long as they were treated with respect, he doesn't mind. The Hokage smiled a bit as he fingered the ball he had in his hidden pouch, remembering the description of the Pokemon the Deer of Life has granted to him for their agreement. An Infiltrating. He remembered the species name was. The flame Pokemon took the form of a monkey with a crown of fire in his head, giving him the impression of having a burning mane. Suitable for him and his contracts. Now, hush and go. The Hokage shooed him with a fond smile as the younger boy grumbled and left. Things will be interesting. Don't you agree, Atsuro? The small ball in his pooch quivered as if agreeing with his musing. 0000 Naru-chan. Naruto didn't know what to expect when he came to the apartment building known as Izumi House. Apparently, the house was newly bought by a shinobi couple who wanted a steady income aside from missions they took and thought it might be good to make a lodging house. He expected a sneer to greet him when he comes in knocking on their door. Maybe even a beating or two. But no, he was greeted with a hug. "Ear. Do I know you?" he asked hesitantly, hugging his brothers and sister closer to him to fight off the nervousness. The woman who greeted him, a pretty lady with light blonde hair tied into a long braid and shining purple eyes, looked perplexed and shocked before suddenly it was replaced with a look of comprehension and sheepish guilt. "Ah. It might be better to come inside." She opened the door wider and invited him. The blonde ninja in training took a cautious step inside the house, noting the warmth radiating from every inch. Nook and door closed with an audible click that echoed through the silence of the house. "Do you think you remember me now, Naru-chan?" Naruto turned around at the unexpected question and suddenly he found himself at a loss of word. Paralyzed, eyes wide and mouth hanging from shock, ignoring the background noise of Ryu pointing around a pink ring around the figure that he saw. The pretty blonde lady that greeted him was no longer human. In her stead was the familiar beautiful form of Cresselia. "Keikire-chan." Naruto gaped at her. "Long time no see. Naru-chan." Cresselia smiled beatifically. "And, welcome to the Izumi house. TBC, Omake Special, Halloween in the Izumi house." Naruto cocked his head to the side in bewilderment. "Just this morning, Xerneas. He means Harutora has just received a packet full of pumpkin, candles, and a whole lot of other knickknacks common for parties, only far darker and scarier." Naruto watched as Harutora pulled a knife and began to carve a smiling face on the pumpkin, all the while humming happily. Yumi-chan didn't stay idle either. On her was a packet full of candies and she herself was now trying to make a cake with lampant and meowstick. The last attempt she made has turned into an amalgamation of some kind of crab, pork, and egg. She claimed that she cooked an okonomiyaki when what she produced was a man-eating meat cake. It has since become a rule that she won't be cooking unsupervised again. Which now leads to the ghost and psychic duo accompanying her. "Haru-ni, what's with the pumpkin and the cake?" He was unable to contain his curiosity for any longer and thus blurted the question. Harutora, for his part, managed to give a sheepish grin at him, a sign that again he has forgotten something to tell to him. "Well, back home, 31st of October is celebrated as the day of Halloween. Halloween is the day that is dedicated to anything supernatural, like ghosts, monsters, zombies, you name it." He never realized how pale Naruto's face turned at the mention of ghost. People celebrated by putting on scary costumes and walk around at night to prank people and ask for candies. Naruto relaxed at the mention of pranks. He could live with that. "The pumpkin?" Naruto asked. "It's kind of symbolic, you see. We make a face carving in pumpkins to decorate the house. We call them jack-o'-lantern." At this, Harutora held up a pumpkin he had carved to make a smiling face with grin that was filled with fangs. It was done perfectly and precisely. "Wanna try?" Naruto gingerly took a knife from the drawer and picked one pumpkin at random. However, as he was about to start, Harutora stopped him and smiled. "Let's make it interesting," he said, and then he started to call everyone in the house currently free and available. In a minute, the living room was filled with him, Harutora, Ryu, Shinku, Kuroro, Irie, Grovile and Arkin. "All right, everyone. Let's play a game," he started. "The game will be Jack-o'-lantern competition," Harutora announced. "Now, the rules are simple. You may work in groups and use only one knife for each person. You may only have one pumpkin to carve, so if you fail, you won't have a second chance. The judge would be those 3 cooks in the kitchen and the winner will choose what today's dinner will be." "Ramen," Naruto, Shinku and Ryu called together. "Curry," Kuroro and Irie chirped in, eyes gleaming with fiery determination to win and taste their very own version of heavenly dinner. "Chicken soup," Grovile called, drool dripping from the corner of his mouth. "This is stupid," Arkin grumbled, slapping a clawed wing to his face. "But, fine, I vote sushi," he said. Harutora grinned to himself and clapped hard to gain attention. "All right, battle starts." Naruto immediately took the young Riolu and Gibble to the side and picked up the biggest pumpkin they could grab, each person holding a knife with a manic gleam in their eyes, silently muttering things about ramen. Off to the side, Arkin picked a medium-sized pumpkin while Grosile took one of the bigger pumpkins, both of them glaring at each other heatedly while exchanging insults to one another. Kuroro hopped over and picked the normal-sized pumpkin, struggling to drag the vegetable over to his side. The house was full of childish laughter, witty banters and flashes of a camera. Harutora enjoyed the sight of it. Naruto's smile, the younger Pokemon's laughter, Grovyle and Archon's playful insults, even the screams in the kitchen that he dare not know. All seemed to make a perfectly harmonic music in his ears. Like spring, full of life. He smirked as he looked at the little camera he has in hand. 400 photos was take today. Yumi's mess up in cooking, Naruto's butchered pumpkin, Archon's frustrated face and even Irie's smiling face. Grovyle somehow won the contest with a perfectly sculpted witch made by using leaf blade. The wood gecko grinned triumphantly at the despairing Archon and sticked a tongue out at him, laughing happily as he saw the usually snide Archon tear up. Halloween this year was enjoyable in the Izumi house. Naruto stood in the training field right behind the Izumi properties, legs spread wide and muscle tense, ready to jump at a moment's notice. He was now wearing a black sleeveless shirt, training pants and shinobi sandals, a contrast to his usual kill me now orange jumpsuit. He'd grown a good 3 inches as well as gaining muscles since his stay in Izumi house. He could honestly say that it was the best years of his life. Hearing a shift in the wind, Naruto jumped away from his spot as it erupted into a giant plume of uprooted earth, dirt and dust. Turning around in time as a sudden gust blew the dust away, Naruto was greeted with the sight of Arceus flapping his tan and blue feathered wings so as to blow away the dust covering his vision. The first bird Pokemon grinned a predatory smirk as he flapped his wings back hard, letting himself rocketing towards the blonde aspiring ninja. Quick attack! He cried his attack as he crushed into the blonde Jinchuriki, sending him back a couple of feet. So you managed to dodge, Nice base speed, kiddo. The avian Pokemon grinned at him, his wings spread wide in a predatory stance. Though, I wonder how long that will help. With that, he propelled himself to strike him once more. Naruto managed to stand and escape the devastating attack by the skin of his neck. The poor tree was snapped in half though. That was one of the nicest tree to nap in, he whined. Get over it, kiddo. Harutora-sama can grow it in seconds. With that reply, Arceus set his deadly talons to good use by using Dragon Claw at him. Naruto skillfully dodged the attack and even retaliated with his own attacks by using his kunais. Left, right, stab, left, right, stab. The rightum continued as they danced in a deadly flurry of purple claws and gleaming knife. It was a moment later that Arceus suddenly flew up and away, successfully avoiding a bluish missile sent his way and getting Naruto to take the attack instead. Later, kiddo, gotta deal with the others now. The ancient bird flew away, the winds helping him move faster. You're up against us now, Naru-ni. Naruto groaned as he sat up and rubbed his hurting stomach. The hell was that? I don't know that you mastered Aurasphere already, Shinku. Naruto looked at the grinning blue canine in front of him. Shinku had a triumphant glint in his eyes, hands crossed in front of his neck and stood in a seemingly relaxed stance. Complete and utter confidence flowed from him. Did Haruto-ni train that move to you already? He asked, feeling a bit jealous that his little siblings get to learn cool moves while he was stuck learning basics. Nope. That wasn't Aurasphere, Naru-ni. He then pointed somewhere to the blonde's right, telling him to turn and see. It was then that he saw Ryu, grinning happily despite a large bump on his head. The combination move me and Ryu made. I name it Ryu Cannon, he declared proudly before he was suddenly swooped up by a small red bird. Naruto suppressed the urge to facepalm. The red bird smiled sweetly at him. You're wide open, Shinku Aniki. Gah! Let me down, Sora. Shinku flailed about, trying to get the small red bird to drop him down to no avail. Sora is a female fletchling and the second youngest of Naruto's 6 eggs. Unlike Irie, who was soft-spoken, calm and graceful, Sora was tomboyish, stubborn, sarcastic and a bit of a teaser. Although, like everybody else, she seems to have a soft spot on his eldest brother. More often than not, she was seen arguing with Arceus on who was the strongest aerial combatant, resulting in crazy duels like acrobatic stunts, air race, hunting, etc. The last and the youngest of them was a male Zorua Naruto named Yuru. Yuru was, like every other of his kind, a naughty little trickster. Naruto was only too happy to indulge him in his pranking spree, resulting in A-grade pranking traps to be set around in the village. Izumi house was mostly safe though, since apparently, Yuru was scared of Meowstic and Lampant. Say please, she teased. Gah, Shinku just growled at her. Put me down. Please. Easy, see? She continued. Fine. Shinku relented, knowing that he has no other choice against his stubborn little sister. PP please. He blinked when he felt wind whipping on his face and realized with an undignified squawk that his sister had let him go in the sky. Ah, damn you, Sora. Thud. Sora giggled a bit when she saw a black spot down on the ground. Oh, she wasn't all that worried. Shinku was many-thing. Charismatic, leader material, prideful, strong, and most of all, durable. Yep, everything is fine. And down you follow. Aerial ace. With that cry, Sora was slapped hard with a glowing wing and sent down to the ground. She looked up, a bit stunned to do anything else, and saw the familiar reptilian face and the signature tan and blue feathered wings of her rival. Curse you! You old beard! She screamed before she hit the hard unforgiving ground with the same loud thud as his brother. Haha. 10 years too early to beat me, brat. Arceus laughed as he flapped his wings idly at the sky. Damn, I sound old. With that after note, he flew off to the forest, hoping to catch some of the other prey to tour air, fight. You might ask what this activity currently going on in the Izumi house is, right? Well, this is one of the traditions set from the very beginning of the official opening of the house, called Weekly Afternoon War, where the occupant of the Izumo house, aside from the landlord and lady as well as the caretakers, fight and compete against themselves. The last man, woman standing will be the winner and granted a free chore week. There is also a daily training hour for all of them who wish to practice and learn more skills and technique to get stronger in the afternoon every day, so their skills won't get shabby. A crash echoed from within the forested area of the training ground. Kuroro stood up shakily from his spot in the tree, having been kicked pretty hard by the wood gecko Pokemon. Grovyle smirked a bit from his perch on a branch, his plume waving in the afternoon wind. Well, I should say you were improving by leaps and bounds, amphibian. The grass type snarked. Still strong as usual, reptile. Kuroro replied back. Kuroro sighed as a resounding thud echoed through the trees. Shinku and Sora, why can't those two did things efficiently? The ever-efficient Toad grumbled. Well, without them this place would be dull. Grovyle replied, smirking happily. Guess so. Kuroro agreed. Let's Conti. Hold on. A childish voice cut through the silence of the dialogue. Let's make a better and interesting fight. A small black blur jumped from the bushes, revealing the form of a little black fox with reddish-tinted hair. His blue eyes blazed with mischief. Yuru. Kuroro recoiled in shock. The trickster. Grovyle gasped. Me. The little prankster chanted happily before his blue eyes shone with power as he collected hazy dark energy around him. Let's illusion. With that cry, the dark energy was let loose, engulfing the other two Pokemon and trapping them inside a B-rank genjutsu strong enough to affect their 5 senses. Yuru wins. The little black fox trotted away, a jaunty tune whistled from his lips as he walked away. He was unprepared, however, when blades of grass was sent flying to him. Leaf blades. Grovyle whispered, spinning his head to rotate his grass plume, sending curved blades of grass on the small dark type. Naughty little mammal. Take this. Bullet seed. He roared. Opening his mouth, Grovyle let loose a barrage of seed-like bullets that exploded upon contact. Yeah. I'm sorry. 0000 they seem rather spirited, aren't they? Yumi sat calmly beside her supposed husband in the porch, watching as the children literally beat each other down in order to escape the chores. Was the chores so difficult? They rather got wounded rather than do it? She wondered. Truthfully, Yumi rather enjoyed doing the chores as it made her relax. Try to do Naruto's and you'll see. Meowstick growled as he sipped his tea. Beside him, Lampant nodded her head. Ha ha ha. It's almost time to wrap this week's war. Harutora laughed as he idly snacked on a cookie. By the way, how come we got a nickname? The human form of the deer of life tilted his head to the side as he looked at the bingo book in his hand intriguedly, as if the piece of literature has some kind of hidden power. Why am I called a witch? Yumi sobbed anime tears, producing a tissue out of thin air and proceeded to wipe her tears dramatically in one of the nearest corner. I never knew Cresselia can be this animated. Harutora grinned a bit. You learn something new every day, Harutora-sama. Lampant said sagely. This is no different, so to say. Meowstick could only nod as he sipped his tea again. 0000. Naruto swung his fist up, giving a successful uppercut to Ryu's chin. The blonde winced as he felt his skin scraping roughly against Ryu's own, his rough skin ability showing its power as he bruised his hand trying to physically attack him. Ryu flew several feet back, but otherwise he was unharmed. Naruto thrusted his hands into his pouch and threw several shurikens at the little dragon only to have it miss as Ryu tunneled underground. Damn! Naruto cursed, struggling to sense his little brother. Naruto was caught off guard when Ryu jumped straight from below him and headbutted him in the chin. The force of the blow was staggering and she was sent several feet back. He regained his bearing and pounced right to the little dragon, engaging him in a taijutsu match. Naruto swiped his feet low to catch the little dragon off guard, but he dodged by jumping. Naruto didn't let the chance to hit him go, however, as he sent a strong jab into the little dragon's stomach. Ryu coughed some bile and stood up shakily. "Ni-chan, wanna see my special technique?" Ryu asked with a tilt of his head. "You wanna see mine?" Naruto smirked. They took a stance and Naruto started to go on a sequence of hand sign. Ryu opened his mouth to gather purplish fire. Dragon Rage. Fuuten. Repusho. A compressed wind shot from Naruto's clapped hands and a burst of purple flame roared out of Ryu's mouth. It struggled for dominance as Naruto continuously clapped his hand and added the wind to his attack. Finally, with some great effort, Naruto clapped his hand hard and sending a large gale strong enough to push the flames and knock Ryu away. Oof! Ryu moaned as he hit the ground. Naruto wheezed a bit to catch his breath and leaned on a tree to rest. He was still in academy after all, so he wasn't all that used to pushing so much chakra for a single jutsu. He was suddenly pinned to the 3x4 well-placed leaf blades. Naruto struggled to break free from his binding, pointedly ignoring Grovile's snickering. "If you're not aware of your surrounding, you'll die early on your career, you know." He spoke nonchalantly. "Speaking of which, are you the last man standing?" He asked calmly, a small smile tugging on his lip. "So the bird is defa?" "Hate to disappoint, but I'm still here." Arceus dived down from the blue sky and landed softly and majestically on the branch, just right above Naruto's head. He looked at Naruto and smirked. "Well, kiddo. Good job surviving this long, but I'm going to take this week's no chore for myself. Over my unconscious body." Grovile said coolly. "It was supposed to be, over my dead body." Grovile. Naruto reminded from his spot in the tree, still trying to free himself from his restraints. "We're not fighting to the dead, kiddo," Grovile said calmly. Grovile opened his mouth and shot a salvo of explosive bullets at Arceus. "Stand still so I can hit you, bullet seed." Arceus weaved around the bullets as if he was playing in the park. He wasn't staying idle as a sitting duck, however, as he swerved around and dodged every bullet sent his way, even occasionally using his tail to slap away one or two bullets straying too close to him. "Aim with your eyes, fool," he mocked as he slapped away one of the bullets, accidentally hitting the blade of leaf pinning Naruto to the tree. "Thanks, Arch," Naruto shouted as he proceeded to pull the other blades off of him. "You owe me one, kiddo," Arceus replied as he flew down and landed several feet away from him and Grovile. "By the way, I feel like I am forgetting something." He mused loudly before he turned on the balls of his feet and dashed away from the incoming leaf blades, showing how the ancient bird was far more at home in land than the air. Well, whatever. 0000 octal 0. Why'd I feel like everyone's forgotten about me? Irie whined as he walked around alone in the forest, devoid of any sign of violence. Must be fun to play together. 0000 octal 0. Naruto immediately joined the fight with his taijutsu, unwilling to be left alone and ignored, and proceeded to jump kick Grovile on the face. The lizard twisted mid-air, letting the momentum take hold of him and land perfectly on a crouched position. He sent another barrage of bullets seeding him as he dashed around, trying to get close. A screech to the right alerted the green lizard of the incoming steel wing, courtesy of one kind Arceus who was grinning madly. "Tag team kiddo. Let's do it." Naruto dashed up and engaged Grovile in a taijutsu combat together with Arceus who tried to hit the lizard with his wings. Grovile proved why he was known to be the tree dweller by evading the attacks with nothing but flexibility. He suddenly jumped away from them, mouth shining with energy, ready to be shot into salvos of bullets when it suddenly dispersed. The three looked shocked. "What happened?" Naruto asked curiously. "It seems that I've shot too many that I'm out of power to do it again." Grovile nodded sagely at this before turning away. Arceus and Naruto looked at him questioningly until they heard the ringing sound of a whistle being blown. Grovile turned to them, a whistle in his neck as he made a T shape with his hands. "Time out," he said. "Denied," and then a triple knockout. Harutora smiled a wry smile as he looked at the disappointed face of Naruto, Grovile and Arceus. For that matter, the disappointed face of everyone is more the word. How did it get down to that? honestly?" he asked, truly bewildered of such an outcome. It usually come down to Archeops or Grovyle to win the war since they were the most experienced and battle-oriented, or sometimes Naruto and Shinku. This week, a history was made. Irie won. Well, Grovyle can't use his bullets again and requested a timeout, which we denied and started attacking him again. He used Pokemon Taijutsu while Archeops used his steel wings in him. I just used the Taijutsus you taught me and tried to hit them. It came down to Archeops hitting Grovyle and Grovyle hitting me while I hit Archeops. Naruto explained with a pout. Yes, that was fascinating. Archeops, stop honing your claws. We're not going to buy a new furniture for you to claw at, he warned, getting the ancient bird to stop and hit his claws behind his back, whistling innocently. They were now sitting together in the dining room, having their bruises and wounds treated. Naruto has discarded his clothing to get his treatment and was now trying to ignore the late afternoon breeze in his skin. So, what do you think? Harutora closed his eyes as he thought of an answer. Well, he begins. I think Shinku and Sora needs to be more attentive and perceptive. Getting ambushed like you did would result in bad things. Kuroro needs to learn how to dispel illusions better, compared to most genjutsu masters. Yuru's illusions are quite tame. Ryu, stop being so childish and think before making a move. What you and Shinku did was a kamikaze move that could end up with you losing more than you can gain. Also, the landlord of the house looked to the winner of the war and sighed. Irie, you need to learn how to navigate around without relying to your emotion sensor. Okay, came the chorus of response from the children. And you all need to expand your techniques and skills, as well as train harder, he added. Yes sir. Dinner was then served by Meowstick and Lampant. They learned after their first experience to not let anyone but the two of them to enter the kitchen for longer than 5 minutes after Yumi accidentally burned a boiling water. How she burned water was still a mystery up to this day. Naruto couldn't cook anything but instant ramen. Ryu eats anything inside the kitchen, raw or not. Shinku stole all the ramen and cookies with Kuroro. Grovyle and Arkan melted the pans and bowls by boiling waters. The rest simply has no interest in cooking. Everyone took their seat in the long dinner table as the dishes was placed in the table. Ramen, curry, sushi, chicken and so on and so forth. Speaking of which, tomorrow is your final test, right? Grovyle turned to the blonde, happily slurping a bowl of ramen. Yay. He responded absently, too absorbed with his food. Was up. Don't talk while you're chewing, geez. Grovyle chided. Well, it's nothing. Just do your best. Of course Titiibeo. He smiled. Ni-chan will ace the test. Shinku waved his hands around wildly as he described how Naruto would ace his tests and be the top of the year. Even that Emo will lose, he ended. You mean Uchiha-san? Harutora asked. Ah, yes. The gloomy child. He shook his head a bit. Aren't you friends with him? Me? More like rival. Naruto answered once he swallowed his second serving of ramen. I'm not that close to him, but I'm at least one that he would acknowledge, somehow, one way or another, he replied uncertainly. Ma, Ganbat na, Harutora cheered. Fight oh, Yuru followed. I'm sure you can pass. Everyone made their cheers for him, ranging from simple good luck to wishes and prayers. Thanks everyone. Naruto smiled. A metaphorical light bulb rose from his head and lit up as he turned to look at his landlord and landlady. Haruto ni, why don't you and Yumi Ni-chan has a baby yet? Weren't married couples supposed to have it? Harutora dropped his spoon as he blushed a deep red, mouth hanging down from shock and embarrassment. Yumi covered her face with her kimono sleeve, hiding her blush as she looked down. Who told you such thing, Naruto? She asked embarrassedly. Archeops. He pointed to the ancient bird who was trying to slip out of the room and escape with his life. Yumi's eye glowed purple as she pulled the fleeing Pokemon with her psychic powers back into the room. You? She pulled a large pair of paper fans out of her kimono and proceeded to beat the living daylight out of him. You winged pervert. Let me expla ouch in. Ouch plee ouch. 0000 octal 0. I think you killed him. Harutora smiled dryly as he eyed the bloody lump in the floor. Well. He should have explained that he just told Naruto about the do and don't for girls. She reasoned, hiding her fans by throwing it through a conveniently opened windows. I would if you gave me the chance, the beaten bird croaked. Well, maybe Naruto is right. Lampant suggested. Why don't you try to have a baby, Yumi-sama? Look at the time. Good night, Everyone, she excused herself and dashed out to escape into her room. Give it a try, Haruto-sama. Grovyle winked and gave him a thumbs up. Be a man and show her the way. That was misleading on so many ways. He whispered, night everyone. He too retreated. The next morning, Naruto rubbed his sleep-deprived eyes as he eyed the red-faced and tired-looking couple. Grovyle, Arceus, Meowstic and Lampant seems to be eyeing them knowingly, like they know something that no other knew. They kept on chuckling and making wolf calls every now and again at the two red-faced, tired, but pleased individuals. What got you all this morning? He asked curiously. Speaking of which, what was that unholy sound last night? I can't sleep, he asked irately. Ah, no kiddos don't need to know. Arceus smirked. About time they did it anyway. He smiled as he walked away. Naruto shook his head. It probably wasn't all that important if they won't tell him. Or at least, it doesn't concern him. Suppressing a sleepy yawn, Naruto plopped himself down on one of the chairs in the dining room to have his milk and cereal breakfast. Pouring the white liquid haphazardly, Naruto sipped his drink and sighed as it helped him regain most of his consciousness from the clutches of sleep. He downed the white substance in seconds and moved on to his bowl of cereal when his little siblings tumbled in. Ohio. He tiredly greeted them. Like him, they were not a morning person and replied with unintelligible words and groans. With breakfast out of the way, the seven of them tumbled together into the bathroom sluggishly, gaining amused chuckles from the elder residents as they linked their moves to that of a zombie's. One chaotic bath later and they were all fresh, fully conscious and ready to face the day. So who wants to join me in class today? He asked. Various reason was strewn around and one by one they left to do their own thing until Kuroro and Yuru was all that is left with him. Naruto shrugged and picked the both of them up and into his shoulder where they perched themselves comfortably. Itekamasu. He shouted. His brothers followed his shout just a second after him. 0000 octal 0. Naruto sat in his usual corner with both Yuru and Kuroro out of their Pokeballs. Ever since he moved into Izumi House, Harutora and Yumi has tutored him on his shinobi studies that the teachers in the academy denied of him to the best of their abilities in between their responsibilities as a Jonin of Konoha. Since then, Naruto was improving by leaps and bounds. No longer was he the dead last, he was now in the same level to those of the clan children simply by skill alone. Oi, Shika, Choji, Naruto greeted both of his friends with a smile and a wave. Morning Naruto, Yuru and Kuroro. Choji greeted with a smile idly munching on his chips. Troublesome blonde. Shikamaru greeted in the standard Nara way of saying hello. The three of them sat in the back of the class, talking and chatting idly about the upcoming test when suddenly a loud drapping noise echoed through the whole building, causing their chatters to die off as they waited expectantly to the daily occurrence. Shikamaru dutifully produced several pairs of earplugs and distributed said item to the rest of their lot, mentally counting down from 3 to 1. 3, 2, 1. With a bang loud enough to shake the windows and jolt down all of the sleeping students in class, the door opened, letting in two female students with a voice as loud as a screaming banshee. Sakura Haruno and Ino Yamanaka entered the room and immediately started their regular shouting match about a certain Uchiha. You see that Ino pig? I won. Sakura screamed her victory at her rival as she pointed to her foot, exactly at the same line as Ino's. Are you blind? I came in faster than you by a second, Ino screamed back. You're the one who's blind. My feet's a millimeter ahead of you and I enter 1 millisecond ahead of you, she responded, butting their head together as they glared death at one another in front of the class. All right, take a seat everyone, Haruka ordered as he entered the classroom along with his co-instructor, Mizuki. Both of them having a stack of paper on their hands. As soon as all the students took a seat, Naruto took both his little brothers into their Pokeballs and pocketed the round object into his pouch. We'll start our test today with the written part. With that message, Haruka and Mizuki set out to spread the paper among the students. As Naruto's hand gripped his paper, a familiar feeling passed through his fingers. Like rubbing an object inside a balloon. Naruto's eyes widened as he realized that this was the same feeling as Yuru's illusion. Genjutsu. He narrowed his eyes as he looked back to the one who gave the paper to him. Mizuki. He ignored the man. For now, he looked down at his paper and realized that it was a test for Jonin levels. Naruto made a tiger seal and pulsed his chakra around his body, destroying whatever genjutsu was placed on him in the paper. The words blurred a little as the illusion broke and the real test appeared a moment later. Naruto grinned happily as he scribbled his answers on the now illusion-free paper. With a proud slam, Naruto flipped the paper down, showing that he was done with test. Iruka smiled at him from his place in the teacher's podium while Mizuki gave him a too sweet smile. 0000 Once the whole class was done, they were ushered by the two teachers into the field to have a sparring match as well as weapons test. Mizuki calmly entered the ring as Iruka called the students one by one to have the test by pitting them against Mizuki. Students after students entered and sparred with the blue-haired instructor before finally Naruto's turn came. Uzumaki Naruto. Iruka called. Naruto stepped up silently and readied himself in his personal stance. Perfected with the help of Grovyle and Harutora. Mizuki eyed him with skepticism before an unholy glint appeared in his eyes. That wasn't the academy stance, Uzumaki, he said. It isn't. Naruto replied. Made it myself. You've to use academy basic, Uzumaki, he forced. That's a bull. Naruto muttered under his breath. The clan children used their own styles, he pointed. Enough. Iruka boomed from the sideline. Let him be Mizuki. The scarred instructor glared at his coworker, daring him to contradict his statement before turning away with a pleased huff as the blue-haired instructor nodded his head. All right. Hajime, he shouted the start of the match. Unlike the other students, Mizuki wasted no time to jump at him, practically desperate to pound him to the ground and give him as much humiliation and pain as he could while simultaneously failing him. Naruto, having forced to fight people much more experienced and powerful than him, i.e. Grovyle and Arceus, wasn't deterred and kept his calm, successfully avoiding the initial strike and lashed out with a kick to the stomach. Mizuki jumped back before making a punch at him. Naruto dropped down before swiped his leg on him, causing him to stumble and fall down. Taking a page out of Shinku's book, Naruto folded one of his hands, the other holding it and jumped, giving the man a strong judo elbow slam. Mizuki grunted hard at the pain his stomach felt before he lifted his leg and kicked Naruto away. Naruto twisted mid-air and landed on one of his leg, just as Grovyle taught him to do. Mizuki went on the offensive with spear hand strikes and jabs. Naruto dodged most of it, only some managed to connect, but it still damn hurt. He balled his fist and was ready to beat the hell of him when a whistle broke the silence. All right. That's enough. Good job, Naruto. Naruto nodded with a smile at Iruka before he subtly turned to face Mizuki and gotchi the man a cheeky grin. 0000. They moved on to weapon tests soon after. In the field they used before, Iruka set up human targets made by tied-up yarns. On each of their heads, chests, stomach, neck, groin was a red bull's eye. All right. Let's start with, Naruto shut off the noise and mused to himself in his own mind. He noted with interest some of the scores the clan children scored for themselves. It's pretty obvious to him that only a handful will be a successful ninja in their career. Uzumaki Naruto, he was called once again. Naruto stepped up and prepared his weapons as he faced the human targets. He threw one kunai, aiming it to the head of one of the human target when suddenly it twitched and swerved to the side, causing him to miss it by several centimeters. He raised an eyebrow at this. The other students was just fine, so why he? He turned his eyes to the side and stole a glance at Mizuki, specifically his glowing blue hands and the chakra string connected to the human targets. That bastard. Naruto growled in his head. All right, Naruto, calm down and find your center. Evening his breathing, Naruto glared hard at the targets as he aimed, imagining himself in line with the target, telling himself that he will not miss. He shot his kunais. 7 out of 9 connected. Naruto grinned to himself, not bad number. 0000. Naruto could honestly say that he was nervous now. He hated the ninjutsu portion of the test with all the passion of the burning sun. No, not because he was unable to use jutsus, far from it. In fact, he was quite proud to say that his repertoire might be the highest in the class, equal to only some of the clan children. It was BQs of one of the tested materials. Bunshin Jutsu. The goddamned no-good technique that was barely useful in combat was the ultimate cause for his twice failure. The only thing that could save him now was the Pokemon Tekken, Double Team, or the B-rank Kinjutsu Kage Bunshin, both of which he knew nothing of. He slumped in his seat in despair. There was now a chance that he won't be able to pass. No doubt Mizuki Teme will take it. Waiting his turn with an aura of gloom and despair, Naruto had half a mind to ask Yuru for help with his illusions but erased the thought a second later. He would do this test fair and square and make everyone proud of him. Uzumaki Naruto. His name called for the third time that day, Naruto squared his shoulder and entered the examination room. With a resounding click, the door closed and Naruto stepped into the middle of the examination room. All right, Naruto. Let's start with Henge. Complying with the order, Naruto made the hand seal for Henge and transformed into Iruka. Brown hair tied into a pineapple-style ponytail, a long scar through the face and all that tiny bitty detail. Iruka nodded, satisfied with the perfect transformation before ordering Naruto to cancel the technique. In a poof of smoke, Naruto was back into a blonde-haired kid. Next, Kawarimi. Naruto formed the hand seals required for Kawarimi and in a poof of smoke, Naruto was far in the back of the examination room, a chair in his place. Using the technique one more time, Naruto switched place once more with the chair and appeared in a poof of smoke in the middle of the examination room. Iruka smiled, pleased that he was doing well in his last chance. Okay Naruto. He began. This is the last test. Bunshin. He said, a hopeful look in his eyes as he wished the blonde luck in performing the wretched jutsu that failed him twice on the exam. Granted, he wasn't doing as well as he is now, but if he doesn't fill the requirement for graduation which includes the Bunshin he won't be able to pass, no matter how good his other scores might be. The only exception to this was if the student has a disability to mold chakra. Gulping, Naruto made the hand signs. Bunshin no jutsu. In a poof of smoke, 3 other Narutos appeared. Looking as if they were on fever after having a severe case of diarrhea and food poisoning, meaning total failure. Iruka sighed and he had to bit back down the disappointment to prevent it from showing in his face and hurting the sad blonde even more. It's unfortunate but you fail, he said. Mizuki smiled. A wicked gleam in his eyes, and so Naruto sat alone in his usual lone spot on top of the swings below the 3 as he watched the other children got congratulated by their parents for their success and graduation from the academy into a genin of Konoha. He doesn't even bother to call out Yuru and Kuroro, unwilling to let them know of his failure and saw their disappointment in him. He was shocked out of his gloom, however, when he was approached by Mizuki. His despairing mind unable to remember the fact that the teacher tried to botch his tests and made him fail, Naruto just watched the teacher approach him. Hey, Naruto. I have a good news for you, Mizuki stated with a neutral smile in his face. You see, your score is so close to passing that we decided to give you a chance to prove yourself. We want you to steal the forbidden scroll in the Hokage tower and learn a jutsu from it, then bring it to this location. He showed a map and pointed to one of the forested area in the northern part of Konoha. Where I'll be waiting. If you're caught, that means you fail. How was it? He asked. I'll do it, Naruto said, determined. I'll get the damn scroll and pass the exam Dadbeo, he pressed. I know you will. Mizuki smiled and left, and so, the lost lamb fell to the devil's temptation. 0000 Night fell soon enough and Naruto launched his operation. Kuroro and Yuru was out of their balls, providing help for him to pass his extra exams. Yuru blanketed them in illusion to be invisible to the naked eye and strong enough to make them unnoticeable to the Dujutsu possessors that they might found mingling in the Hokage tower. Naruto made a straight beeline to the hidden room and practically stripped all of the drawers clean of their contents and immediately snatched the large rolled-up scroll at the end of the drawer. Having found what he needed, Naruto dashed out of the room, uncaring for who he passed before he suddenly bumped into someone, the illusion breaking as a physical contact was initiated. Naruto? At the sound of the familiar voice, Naruto turned to see the old man standing right in front of him, eyeing him with surprise before his eyes hardened at the sight of the scroll behind the boy. Why are you? Sorry Ji-chan. Oiroke no jutsu. In a poof of smoke, Naruto was no longer a little blonde boy in orange. He was now an adult girl with generous bust and big breast and long blonde hair tied in pigtails. She striked a post with her naked body, the smoke from the transformation barely hiding her personal area from showing to the world. I'll join. Yuru shouted, and in a blast of dark haze, the small forks was turned into a black-haired woman with large breast and big bust. Not wanting to be outdone, the prankster fox hugged himself close to his brother in their female disguise, causing their rather large breasts to press against each other and jiggling around. Sexy team. He winked at the old man. The Hokage was instantly KO'd in a shower of blood from his nose, a blissful smile on his face. Kuroro eyed his 2 brothers with a deadpan before saying the dreadful message to them. I'm reporting you to Yumi Nichan, he said. Now, let's get going, he said. The 3 of them began to make their escape from the tower and tree hopped into the place they were supposed to wait in. 0000 Naruto and his 2 brothers sat on top of one particularly large branch of a tree and opened the forbidden scroll to read and choose one of the many techniques. Naruto's eyes fell to one jutsu he knew but unable to use. Kage Bunshin. He immediately set it upon himself to learn it. Through several tries and failure, Naruto finally able to use the jutsu perfectly. Nice, you don't need to do the chore again, now, Yuru pointed out. Hey, you're right. Naruto smiled at the discovery of the usefulness of his technique. You two are really hopeless. Kuroro sighed. Kuroro whipped his head to the side as he heard rustling noises. Someone's coming, Ni-san. Naruto. There you are. The three turned as they saw Iruka entering the perimeter through the bushes, an angry expression on his face as he eyed the student and his brothers sitting in the tree with the forbidden scroll in their possession. He stomped to the base of the tree they were occupying and looked up to them, a questioning glare in place. Do you know what you just did? He shouted his question. Mizuki-sensei said that my score came too close to be failed and thus gave me a chance to prove that I'm good enough to be a ninja by infiltrating the Hokage tower. Take this scroll and learn a jutsu from it. Are you here to take the scroll and pass me? Naruto asked innocently. Mizuki? Iruka asked, bewildered. He suddenly gasped as he looked back up. Don't tell me look out, he shouted suddenly. Kuroro immediately used his fast reaction to push his brothers and himself out of the way as several kunai and shuriken was thrown their way. Having successfully evaded the attacks, the three siblings turned to the direction the attack came to see Mizuki, grinning evilly at them all, a Fuma shuriken strapped behind him. Yo! Demon brat, Iruka. He greeted with a sneer. What's the meaning of this? Explain yourself, Mizuki. Iruka growled, getting into a stance. As you wish. He smiled evilly and turned to Naruto. Do you know why you're called Demon Brat? He asked. Do you know why everyone hates you? Why everyone hurts and curse you with all the hatred they have? I don't expect you to know, but do you want to know? He grinned insanely at Naruto as he saw the blonde nodded stiffly at him, practically desperate to know why he was hated. Wait, Mizuki, don't. It's because, that night 11 years ago, the Kyuubi wasn't killed. It was sealed. Sealed into you. You're the Kyuubi. You're a demon. The mad instructor shouted at him, laughing with insane glee as he saw the horror in Naruto's eyes as the boy trembled in denial. That being said, die. He threw the giant shuriken from his back and into the frozen blonde. No, I'm not. Naruto paid no heed to the approaching weapon as he denied the truth presented to him by the traitor. Ni-san, Oni-chan. Kuroro and Yuru moved their body to protect their brother as they closed their eyes, waiting for the inevitable pain of their death. They blinked, however, when the pain never come. They looked up to see Iruka's trembling form that protected the three of them from the giant weapon. Said weapon was now stabbed into his back as he coughed up blood at all three of them. Iruka sense. Why are you? Naruto sobbed brokenly. Naruto, you're not a demon. Remember that. You're your own self. You're my lazy, prankster and incompetent student, not a demon. I'm sure your brothers thought the same. He coughed at him before he slumped down, unconscious. Thank you. Iruka-sensei. Naruto wiped the tears out of his eyes and stood up, glaring hatefully at Mizuki all the while. You're going down, Teme. He turned his gaze from Mizuki when Kuroro trembled, light glowing from his body as his form transformed. He got bigger and slimmer in size as he changed. When the light died down, Kuroro was no longer a Froka. He was now a dark blue frog like Pokemon with a light blue underside. Its eyes have yellow sclera, and it has a white bubble scarf. It has dark blue hands and toes, and white circular fingers. Frogadier. Naruto whispered in awe. You ready to take him down? He asked. That shit hurt you, Ni-san. I'm going to pound him down. He glared at Mizuki hatefully. Let's do this. Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto roared as he formed the hand seals to make the jutsu. Kuroro jumped hard, easily covering the distance between him and his target before shoving his elbow up front. Iron Mountain. He hit Mizuki with his elbow. The strike strong enough to send the traitor plummeting down to the ground where the 100 Naruto clone was waiting to give his beatdown. He jumped once more from his perch and positioned his legs to stomp into the man's chest. Bounce. He landed harshly on the man's chest, eliciting a loud snap as he broke some of his rib cage. Feeling evil, Kuroro decided to apply his newfound strength into Newton's third law. Action equals reaction, and jumped up high into the air. The backlash of his jump and the pressure applied further destroying the man's chest. Beat him down, boys. Naruto roared. The clones let out a deafening battle roar and proceeded to punch and kick Mizuki as much as possible. After he was satisfied that the bloody lump in the forest ground wasn't moving anymore, Naruto made a beeline to the wounded Iruka as Kuroro picked Yuru up and bounded over to him. Iruka-sensei. Hang in there, Iruka-sensei, he called. Ah. Naruto, good job. He congratulated. Would you close your eyes for a moment? I've a surprise for you. Iruka said. Complying to his request, Naruto closed his eyes. Iruka released his Hite-8 and tied it around Naruto's forehead. Done. He said. Naruto opened his eyes as he fingered the cold smooth metal of his Hite-8 and gaped at his sensei. Iruka-sense. Why are you? Congratulations on graduating, Naruto. Iruka congratulated with a smile. Naruto turned around as he saw clappings and wolf calls behind him only to see Kuroro and Yuru celebrating together with him with smiles on their faces. Eyes welling up with tears, Naruto smiled at them and sniffled. Arigato. 0000 octal 0. Yumi and Harutora eyed the exhausted form of their ward with a small smile. The fatigue finally caught up with him after he arrived home, coupled to the strain of making 100 or more kage bunshin as well as the mental backlash. The boy was soon collapsed in their arms. He grew up so fast. Yumi said. I hope he can cope well with the news. Harutora said. Well, let's leave him to his sleep. He yawned and moved away into his door. Yumi in tow when they suddenly stopped in their tracks. Looking back, they saw Naruto's hand holding the sleeves of their clothes, his eyes wet and nose sniffing. What's the matter, Naruto? He asked softly. I'm the holder of Jinchuriki. I know you must hate me now, but can I still leave here with you please? He asked meekly, heads burrowed deep into his blanket and pillow. So that's the reason you're so down and silent when you got home. Harutora smiled at him and ruffled his hair. We don't hate you. Even if you house all the bijus in the world, we don't hate you Naruto, he said softly. Now, go to sleep champ. The two then walked away from the room and turned off the light as they went out, only to stop once more when they heard Naruto. Where are you going? The blonde asked. His mind giving him images when he was left alone in his room in the hospital or his apartment years before. The loneliness eating at him and the sadness he had now amplifying his fears. Where are you going? Why am I always alone? He asked. Yumi moved back inside, beckoning Harutora to follow her and did the same. She then hugged the blonde boy tight and whispered to him comforting words. You're wrong, Naruto-chan. She said softly. It's not, where are you going? But, please stay here with me. That you have to say, she said. Naruto's eyes widened as he sniffled softly and hugged the both of them hard, unwilling to let them go. Please stay here, he said. Okay. They both slipped into the futon and snuggled into each other, Naruto in the middle for them both. Oyasumi nasai. Naruto. She whispered softly as she planted a soft kiss on his forehead. Sleep tight, lil, champ. Harutora whispered as he held the blonde tight. Night. Ni-san. Ne-chan. The end. Thanks for watching. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.